Howdy guys, Attorney Walter Hnot. Now let me get this kind of adjusted a little bit better because it is just not perfect. Wait. Oh, there we go. Yes, I am that tan. Yes, I do not have this. Well, let me get, okay, there we go. Perfect. All right, so let me just boop. There we go. Looking good. All right, let's get right to the show. Now, before we go into all details, and I just realized I'm not fully, no, I'm good. All right, what you need to know is we are going to be doing a battle today between the two parties that are most likely potentially to have the absolute best SSI setup. We're talking about students versus blind individuals. Who has the best setup? Howdy, Faith Moore. Howdy, guys. Now, before we go into that, I'm going to take at least 25 minutes to go into the following. Please leave 5-star reviews. Please like and subscribe. Now we're done with that. How do you leave 5-star reviews? Google Disability Resolution Law Firm. Cool. All right, now we're going into the most important part. Who is the winner of having the best potential shot at earning money while on SSI benefits? I know that's what we really care about. Here we go. Now, I'm going to read straight from the SSI website. And the reason this came up is that I had a staff member that was explaining to an employee basically the finer details of SGA, how it works for blind people. And they didn't include one particular thing. So I thought I'd make a video on it because, hey, why not? All right, here we go. Student earned income exclusion for SSI. What does that mean? It means they can have income, but a certain amount is excluded from how they calculate it. Pretty cool, right? Kenobi, did the new Kenobi episode come out? Is that a Thursday? Can somebody help a disability attorney out and figure out when the Kenobi episodes actually come out? I thought it was on Friday, but I could be wrong there. All right, thank you for the $5 donation, by the way. Now, here we go. We're going to read through this. This is for the students. Then we're going to go over to the blind individuals. A blind or disabled child who is a student regularly attending school, college, or university, or a course of vocational or technical training can have limited earnings that are not counted against his or her supplemental security income, SSI, benefits. The maximum amount of the income exclusion applicable to a student, not the blind, to a student, is $1,930 for 2021 per month. Total for the year of 2021 is $7,770. Okay? Now let's talk about what it is for 2022. For 2022, students, so this is like crazy. This is amazing, right? If you are a student, you can earn extra money as an SSI person each month while going to school, right? So we went through that. It's a school, college, university, or course, or vocational or technical training. They can earn money and it doesn't count against their limit for SSI. For 2022, the student earned income exclusion amounts increased by 5.9% to $2,040 per month, but not more than the total of $8,230 annually for 2022. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. A lot of people don't know that. Now, with that said, it looks like episode 4 is out. Wednesdays, 3 a.m. They come out on Wednesdays? So many missed opportunities. All right, we'll keep reading through this. Now, their calculating method, they have a whole thing on how they calculate it. That's not important. The bottom line is you can earn $2,040 as a student and not have a count against you for SGA purposes, substantial gainful activity, $1,350 per month. Bottom line, you're a student, you can make money. It's not going to hurt you with the SSI. However, the moment that you graduate from becoming a student, or the moment that you graduate as a student to have that degree, you will get a CDR. It's almost always automatic. Now, with that said, that is essentially the setup for students. Now, remember that students get just over $2,000 that they get to earn without it hurting them. Okay? Now we go over to the blind individuals. SGA for blind individuals applies to Social Security benefits, but does not apply to supplemental security income benefits. I'll read it again. SGA, the $1,350 rule, but it's higher for blind individuals, right? So for blind individuals, and I have a chart here, I can go through a couple of years if you want. For blind individuals for 2022, they can earn on SSDI benefits up to $2,260 without it hurting them. So once again, blind individuals have an SGA for SSDI benefits, like the paid into disability program. Okay, we got that. So the bottom line is these SSDI benefits have that SGA limit, but for blind individuals, $2,260. They can earn all the way up to there and it's not going to hurt them. Okay. However, for non-blind individuals, it's $1,350. Now, here's the crazy part. Here's the thing that the staff member didn't have right. Blind individuals, their SSI benefits, like didn't work, didn't pay into the system in that regard, but they're on disability, they're on supplemental security income. That SGA rule doesn't exist. Just think about that for a moment. There's no SGA limit requirement for blind individuals when they're on SSI. That's crazy, right? All right, let's go through this real quick. All right, so SGA for the blind applies to Social Security disability benefits, but does not apply to supplemental security income SSI benefits. The formula for determining the SGA amount for the blind is set by law, blah, blah, blah. We don't really care how they actually calculate it unless we're doing a whole show on it. Anyways, the bottom line is those who are blind and on SSI do not have an SGA limitation that is applied to them. Okay, now let's go through this real quick. SGA for the non-blind disabled applies to Social Security and SSI benefits. So if you're not blind, SSI and SSDI, they both have an SGA limitation. But if you're blind, SSI benefits, no SGA limitation. And if you're on SSDI benefits, which is weird because you like actually pay into that program, then you do have an SGA limitation. That's weird, right? That's weird. I wanted to point this out because it's so crucial for blind individuals to know this so that they can go out and work and earn and not be as limited when they're on SSI. Now, with that said, who's the winner? Who's got the better setup for on SSI? Well, it's really simple. Now that you guys know the basics, it's really simple. SSI students, they get to earn up to $2,040 per month. Doesn't matter to them. It's an income exclusion. They can earn up to that amount and it doesn't count against them, right? That whole you earn $2 and then they take away $1, right? From your benefits doesn't apply to students for the first $2,040 that they earn. Pretty sweet deal. But how sweet is that deal when there's no SGA limitation? So there's no substantial gainful activity limitation, right? So basically, let's look at the chart real quick. So a student has $1,350 if they're not blind, if they're just a student and they're disabled on SSI, $1,350 as basically their cap. Now they're allowed to earn $2,040, but every dollar above that they earn, or every $2 above that they earn, they take away $1 from their benefits. And they can earn up to $1,350 in here. Okay, all right. So, once they clear their, this situation, okay, all right. Now, on the other side of the coin, this coin over here, the blind side of the coin, you have individuals who basically, putting it very simply, don't have an SGA limitation. So that means, in theory, they could keep earning and earning, and the government could just take away some portion, for every two, they take away one of their benefits. But what's interesting about this is they could, in theory, earn and have like a $300,000 job as an SSI blind person because there's no SGA limitation. So in reality, for most students, that's a great deal because you got a buffer of $2,040 that you can earn. Right? But then at the same time, where it's not going to count towards your SGA, but there's still a lessening amount there. Every $2 you earn, they take away $1, blah, 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 right? Then you go above, you're going to get hit with that. But if you're blind, the really interesting thing is that there's no technical limitation where you hit this thing and you're done. Now, why did the SSA do this? They did this. Yeah, I know, Adam Brock, these are stupid rules. I know that they're stupid rules. I fully agree with you. Having all these different changes. Look, the bottom line is for SSI people, they should be allowed to earn, in my opinion, somewhere around, let's say, $3,000 per month. right? The limit on how much they can store in assets or resources should be like 10, 12 grand. Couples, let's say 20, 30 grand, somewhere in there, right? That would make this whole simple thing be a lot easier. Instead of having to go, okay, well, the blind people get this and the students get that. And the truth is the government's filled with a lot of that. The government's filled with a lot of this whole, well, we're going to give this group of people, we're going to carve out a little bit more for them. And we're going to carve out a little bit more for these people over here. And that's how we're going to magically make equity. But I want to point out one thing. They only make those arguments as a United States government when the restrictions are too great and they need to carve out pieces for those groups of people who need more assistance than others. However, the simple thing is, if we didn't restrict everybody as much and raise the limits, we wouldn't have to carve out all these little exceptions. Kind of interesting to think of it that way. If we weren't so restrictive towards the SSI people, we wouldn't have to carve out something for the students and something for the blind and something for this group and something for that group. We would all just have less restrictions. Now, I know that seemed a little bit complex and a little bit out there, and it's like, what the heck? But I wanted to show you guys that SGA doesn't count towards SSI blind people, right? That's the big thing. That means that a blind person, with all the amazing technologies that exist out there, could make significant amounts of money, in which case, they could still, now they would still take away benefits after they got to a certain point, right? So $2 every one. And you would see the students kind of edging in there as to the benefit. Who's the real winner? It's actually blind students. Blind students have the best potential option for earned income options and all that stuff. They do. So at the end of the day, now look, there's another thing too that we have to talk about aside from just the statute, right? Which is that essentially those who are students who are not blind have the significant advantage of being able to read, watch a board, watch a computer, etc. So in that regard, yeah, exactly. And I think Tim Hanna has it right there, which is every blind person would give their SSI benefits back for the opportunity to go forward and basically be able to see, which is kind of the bottom line with all this stuff. Yeah, we could say students have it really good for what they get. We could say blind people have it really good for what they have. But the truth is, students that are not blind have a massive advantage of being able to see. And the reason why they carved out a specific area for the blind individuals is because out of all the special senses, that's what they call them, phase senses that we have, because of all the special senses that we have, the eyesight is the most crucial to being able to do things. Your ability to hear is not as important as your eyesight. The ability to smell, the ability to taste, not as important as your eyesight. All right, so that was kind of a little bit all over the place, but the bottom line is you get it now. No SGA limitations for the SSI blind people, SGA limitations for the students, but they also get to basically earn income with an income exclusion that doesn't hurt them. Yes, super scruffy face. I have been working on the farm nonstop. In fact, I finally got to get the videos together to go ahead and load some of those videos. So I'm really, really excited about that. Now, I didn't want to do a big topic today, a really tough topic or whatever. And I probably could have done a little bit better with that one. But the point is, I've been working nonstop. Okay, so we're going to do phone calls. Then we're going to go to basically the security expert. We might have a shorter date today because I'm super tired and I want to do some editing on the videos that I've done of me working on the farm because some people have been asking for that. So I'm putting the phone number up there. I'm going to go ahead and see if we have any incoming calls coming in. Looks like we just missed one. Let me go ahead and try and get that rolling real quick, and then we will take the first call. Poison Ivy loves Walter, no doubt. Indeed, guys, I'm covered. I am covered in poison ivy everywhere. It's horrific. But let's get to this call. Okay, hi, this is Attorney Walter Hnot. We are live on YouTube. Remember to use a fake name. Would you like me to answer a specific question, or would you like me to go ahead and run hearing questions with you? Go ahead.
Yes. Hi, Walter. How's it going?
Very good.
I've been on SSDI for about 6 years, but after the first year and a half, my wife and I started a business, an LLC business, and I found out that I couldn't do it because it's just too heavy work for me. So now I just do basic like duty work, like paperwork, but it's errands for the company.
Okay.
So I was wondering if that would affect my benefits in any way.
Well, okay. So first thing that comes to mind is, so you're still working at this company that you own with your wife. You're just doing the back office administrative functions right now, and you're wondering, hey, could the SSA come and potentially harm me in any way with what I'm earning and what I'm doing? Correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you're currently on SSI, and she's currently on SSI, or no?
No, this I.
Okay. So basically, what you have to look at is your SGA limitations. So you can't earn more than $1,350 unless, like we just went over, you're blind, in which case there's no SGA. But you still have to watch out because you get 85 bucks that you get to go ahead and earn to begin with, and then from there, the transition is essentially after the first 85, they're taking away for every $2 you earn, they take away $1 from your benefits. So the bottom line is, yeah, but now, are you reporting your income to the SSA? Do they know about it? Or what is your income per month?
Well, when I first opened up the business, I let them know that I did open a business, but then after I couldn't do it, I let them know I couldn't do it, and since then, after opening my business, I went through two reviews after.
Mm-hmm.
And they said I was still disabled,
mm-hmm.
and so I was wondering if having a business, an LLC business, would hurt me in any way. I draw a paycheck of about $700 to $800 a month, depending how much hours I put in.
And how much are you getting from SSI benefits per month?
I'd say about $1,600, $1,700.
What's your what's the state supplement? What state are you in? What's the supplement amount for SSI?
I'm in Hawaii.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering if this having LLC would affect me, or if all it matters is how much I get from the business.
So the thing that you're going to run into is that the SSA can go ahead and attribute to companies. Now, you own this company that you're still working at. You're still doing an LLC, correct?
Yes,
okay.
And I'm going to be 62 in September.
Okay, so I mean, and you're on SSI, not SSDI, correct?
SSDI.
Oh, so you're on SSDI. Okay, gotcha. All right. So if you're on SSDI,
yeah.
Still SGA, applies to you, bottom line. But bottom line is, if you're earning that amount, they're not going to restrict your benefits by the $2 you earn. They take away $1 rule, because that's for SSI only. So you should be okay at that rate. But I did another video where I basically went through kind of like all the degradations of where you kind of with that whole situation. And remember, you're SSDI, which means you're going to sit on that until you hit full retirement around 66, 67, and then they'll transition you to retirement. But the bottom line is, when you go ahead and do this job, it would be advisable to have a doctor go ahead and state in their medical records, in their fact pattern about you, all the accommodations that you give yourself to be able to do this job, like extra time to do this, or you don't have to do that, or somebody comes and help you do some function of it that normally you just couldn't do because of your limitations. The other thing too is to know that because it is self-employment, you get to some degree assess what you think your income should be. And as a result of that, the SSA gets to play that game too. So even if you only earn a certain amount, they could say that you're actually earning more because what your functions are equate to more value, right, than what you're actually providing on your IRS tax sheet. So they could say, okay, well, you're only paying yourself $700-800 a month, but they could come back and say, but we feel that you're actually paying yourself around $1,500, or you're doing $1,500 worth of work every month. So you have to be really, really careful with that. Another detail too that would be really helpful for you. Now, what is it that you're making or doing? Like, is it a service? Is it a product?
We do a product, and it's more like labor intensive because I've got arthritis in my ankles. So when I first started, it's fine for the first day. Then after the 3 days, my ankles start to swell up. So I know my limitations. I cannot be on my feet all day. So I backed off and had to hire people to do all the manual labor part. And all I do is, like I said, I answer the phones, and it's equivalent. And we don't get too much phone calls. We just, basically where we're located, and then I do go to the bank and make the bank deposits and stuff like that, but nothing physical.
So if you don't mind me asking, what is it that you're making? Or if you can't say it, just kind of give me a roundabout understanding as to what the physical involvement with this job is. That way I can tell you what kind of accommodations you can probably incorporate into your medical, doctrinal or your medical documentation to help keep these CDRs at bay. And keeping in mind all of this, if you've gone through 2, you're still approaching 62, but you're self-employed, which makes you a target for more CDRs,
Right. Okay. Well, we do. We dispense propane, and we carry and load the tanks for our customers, and it's more labor work, a lot of labor work. So, like I said, I can't really stay on my feet all day. I can walk around. I know my limitations because I can feel my ankle swelling up. So I just stop. Well, really, I don't go up there at all. Really, because I got somebody working, so I don't need to be up there. And my wife does all the paperwork for the business, all the bookkeeping, and so I'm just there. Well, when you first initially opened it up, I was supposed to be labor at that, but I found out I can't do it.
Okay. So here's the bottom line. Look, propane tanks, the average tank's 20-pounder. Some people get 30-pounders. Sometimes you got to move around 50-pounders and then go to the 100-pounders, 200-pounders, etc. So that is a job that you absolutely do not. I'm assuming you have physical impairments, but that is a job you definitely don't want to be doing labor intensive, moving around things. So you would want to have proof that you're paying some individual to actually drop these things off, fill these things up, all that stuff. And the other thing that you have to watch out for is that with filling propane tanks, it's usually outside. So it's always outside. So as a result of that, it's one of those things where the expectation of your ability with your impairments to interact with the outside sun, interact with, having to basically stand there for an extended period while you're filling tanks, having to deal with customers, who are basically bringing these tanks over to you. So from my perspective, it's a tricky situation because it's going to draw quite a bit of attention. But yeah, I mean, if you're just doing back office related functions and, basically calculations and things like that, you're safe for the most part, but just make sure you have at least 2 backup people. So the person that's doing the physical labor and then another person that can replace them if they're sick, because otherwise you become the assumed person of that business to do the physical labor if that other person gets sick.
Okay. No, I got actually 3 employees work for me because they all want to work part-time. Nobody wants to work full-time jobs nowadays.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, but then you don't have to pay them all the extra benefits too. That's something else. When they switched that over where all full-time employees had to have all those benefits, pretty much every small corporation out there, even mid-sized corporations, couldn't afford to employ people at that full-time capacity with all of the extra benefits and such. So no, I totally hear you. It's but people also, they want to work part-time and then they usually have some other side of some other part-time gig. But I gotta be honest, what I've noticed is people tend to do better with vocational tasks, job, whatever. People tend to do better when they get to switch it up throughout the day. Doing one job the whole day, it can drive people crazy. I have noticed that. So, yeah. So, anyways, good sir, did I help answer your question? Are any additional questions?
No, that should do it. I was just wondering if it's, because I work in a part-time for the business. Not, it's like maybe 10 hours a week, really. And then that's about it. I just, like I said, I do this basic running around, bank deposits and small little errands once a week. But other than that, I have guys that 3 other employees that do all the labor-intensive stuff.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. You should be okay. You should be okay as long as your impairments don't get better. You should be okay because you're staying away from the physical labor aspect. But remember, you're also doing mathematics. You're also doing paperwork. You're also upkeep of business, its corporation, its entity, etc. So you're doing multi-step tools, multi-step work, which means that realistically, at the end of the day, you're doing executive functions like managing things, supervising people, etc., setting schedules, setting payroll, etc. So they can always use that against you when doing kind of a vocational analysis. But remember, whatever you were found on back in the day, if you were found disabled way back in the day, the old rules apply. So you should be okay so long as your original impairments continue to be as severe as they were or worse going forward.
Okay, sounds good. Well, Walter, thank you very much. I appreciate your answers, and that's about it for me. So,
Perfect. Well, sounds good, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. You have a wonderful, wonderful night.
Okay, you too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, aloha.
Aloha. So, guys, that's a great example of an individual. Yay, Shirley! Thank you for the $9.99 donation. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So here's the deal, guys. When it comes to owning a corporation as a disabled individual, you are on a hot list for CDRs. We do not traditionally see individuals getting CDRs at 62 plus. We used to not see them at 58 plus. We used to not see them at 55 plus. But every president we get, there's even more. Remember how Biden was in his pre-White House documentation presenting the ideology that he intended to reduce the amount of times that people were getting CDRs and even reduce them further than just getting rid of the Trump rule for the 2-year rule. And then, of course, now we're seeing people getting CDRs not within the 2. He got rid of that, but we're seeing them get them much, much older, much older. Which I thought with him in, it was going to change, but it hasn't. We're seeing a lot of people getting CDRs that are much older than even during the Trump era of getting them. So a little bit of an issue there. Now, with that said, just going to go ahead and put the phone number there. If you guys want to call in, that's where we can do that. But bottom line, another detail that I want to go through is we're going to be doing a series of videos when I get back from the farm in New Jersey, specifically on current events and what's going to be happening with politicians and the whole issue related to running out of money for retirement benefits. Now, as you guys know, I started a report on this. People got super mad at me. They're like, hey, they'll never run out, blah, blah, blah. And then the truth is, during the 80s, they almost ran out. And then currently, now, as it stands around 2033, they're going to as well run out, where they would only pay out essentially for retirement 70% of the benefit. Now, the bottom line is this. We're going to go through the politicians, what their expectations are, what they're going to be doing. But there's a problem on the horizon, and that is that the U.S. government, through Biden's administration, has added an additional $10 trillion so far as calculated onto our debt. So Trump in his 4 years did 5. Biden's around 10 trillion right now about a debt. Biden's trying to slim down the spending to only spend above what we can afford, about 1 trillion above it for the next year. So that'll be good. That'll actually, cut back a lot on what he's, currently doing. But the truth is, we have to go into the green at some point in the near future. Otherwise, we have a major problem for the retired individuals. And the SSDI people are safe for the most part at the moment. But a lot of politicians and other individuals are trying to promote this identity of taking the SSDI trust fund and then putting it into the retirement trust fund. Now, there's a problem with that. The retirement trust fund is significantly larger. So no, Bernie probably said no. They're not. They're not. The trust fund for the retirement benefits will run out. Look up Chief Actuarial Stephen Goss. He's the Chief Actuary on behalf of the SSA. You can look at his report specifically 2033, 2034. They will reduce people's benefits to around 77% of retirement. So I don't know what Bernie said for 75 years, but I can assure you, Bernie's not saying for 75 years that things are okay. The bottom line is this. We at some point as a nation have to go back to, like, the green, which is what Clinton had for a short period of time. So they're about to raise SSDI $2,400 a year. Wait, SSDI. So Alicia, SSDI can go from $0 way past $3,000. So they're already higher than $2,400 a month. But SSDI, what you earn throughout your years, they use an averaging algorithm for the past 35 years to figure out what they're going to go ahead and pay you. So the bottom line is, some people get way more than $2,400. $2,400 a year? No, $2,400 a month. So yeah, that whole $2,400 a year, that would be an incorrect statistic. So Pelt Don Posse says, I'd love to call you and ask what's better, Medicare or Medicare Advantage. I mean, it depends on what you need, but obviously there's the addition. I'll do a whole video on that because that's a bigger thing. So yeah, they are trying to put through a statute to increase SSDI benefits. They are trying to basically increase the statute for SSI. But the bottom line is none of those right now are looking to pass. And that's because the Republicans don't want to pass it through and the Democrats don't have enough support. I've seen those. We've seen those bills come through over and over again. It's usually from kind of low-level Democrats, whether it's a House rep or a senator. But unfortunately, I don't see any of those passing anytime soon. I know that Blind to Billionaire promises you guys pretty much every other day that there's going to be a $1,200 check, a $1,400 check, a $2,000 check, etc. But all that stuff is inaccurate and a total and complete lie. It is unfortunate that there's the presentation of the, I see, and here's the thing, he'll go on the record and correct what his video says in the big promo thumbnail, but the reality is that the thumbnail is always just a disingenuous, it's a lie. That's what it is. It's coming soon. There's no fourth stimulus coming. Please let me assure you of this. There's no fourth stimulus coming. The US government cannot give you guys extra money right now, because if it does, it will devalue the US currency, which will throw the whole thing into a structured mess. If they gave you a stimulus right now, your money would be worth even less. The cost of products such as food, such as gasoline, would go up even higher. That is the problem with this whole fourth stimulus thing. Okay, Beatrice Franklin says, I have a question. I was injured on the job, use of force. I receive SSDI. I'm 54 years old. I go up for recertification in 5 to 7 years. My question is, I applied for PSOB with DOJ. So what's the question? Okay, so what's the question though? Ask me a question. Let's see. Melissa Collier, I do know Let's Go Brandon did lie about helping SSA. So the thing with Trump is that he put in basically a hyper-aggressive capitalistic type of commissioner, which was Commissioner Saul. And Commissioner Saul would have been a great commissioner of some agency in the federal government that was about making money or tightening up the ship, but not a great commissioner for the SSA. The SSA, the Social Security Administration, is like more of a non-profit-y kind of agency, and you want somebody like Commissioner Kijikazi in there to actually run that aspect of it. The reality of that is that Commissioner Saul came in under the direction of President Trump and slimmed down a lot of things. He increased CDRs, he increased CDIs, CDI units. He, changed the rules to make it harder for musculoskeletal and mental-based impairments to be found disabled. So the reality is that Trump was, look, you could look at it as a thing where he was, to the SSA, but the reality of it is that he was to some degree cleaning it up and making it more efficient to cost less. He was doing a business thing. To him, the SSA as an agency was another business, when in reality, it's kind of more of a nonprofit sort of gig. So that's why when it comes to the SSA, you traditionally want more of a nonprofit person running it. You do not want a hyper-capitalism type like Commissioner Saul, unless it's just costing too much across the board, unless there's rampant fraud going on, which, to be fair, Commissioner Saul did clean up a lot of the fraud that was occurring specifically by individuals that really were not disabled. There were quite a few, I'm disabled, and then they're out there playing basketball and having a great time. And some people will say, well, my impairments, can't be seen. But the reality is, if they're out there playing basketball, having a great time with everybody and smiling and interacting with the crowd, interacting with fellow mates, knowing the rules of the sport, then the mental claim isn't so strong. And the physical claims that you have limitations with physical movement are also not so strong. So there's that side too. Like, you got to be fair at this stuff. You can't just say one party is crap, one party is great. They both have their benefits that are good or bad. Okay, so Beatrice Franklin, let me go back to this. You're on SSDI benefits. So basically, yeah, it'll affect your benefits for 1 month because you'll have a massive, well, actually, no, keep in mind, if this is an award that you get, most awards are not counted in that regard as like an income. So it wouldn't actually affect you, but it depends on how you're awarded this and how they calculate it. So is it countable income to you? Is it not countable income? You have to look at that, but most awards are not accountable income. So, in the legal sense of being awarded money as a result of something bad happening. So in that result, it wouldn't affect you. But if they did, like if there's some portion of the benefits that were countable income, then in that sense, if it's over $1,350, then for that month you wouldn't be eligible. But then that money that you got would become a resource as opposed to just being income. And once it makes that magical jump to the next month of becoming a resource, then for SSDI people, it won't affect you at all. Then you're set. So the worst realistically that's going to happen to you is you won't get benefits for a month. And the way they do it, just so you know, is it takes them around 3 months to figure out what happened. So you'll get your benefits, you get your benefits, you get your benefits. So let me do that again. You get your benefits and you get this big check, right? And let's say that it was countable, although I don't think what you're talking about is countable. Let's say it was countable. What happens is when you jump to the next month, you get your benefits, you jump to the next month. So you're now 3 months down the line, they figure it out. And usually around here, they let you have this one, but then they say you don't get to have this one. So then the next month after that, they'll kill your benefits. You just won't get benefits for that next month that follows. And that way, basically, somewhere down the line, you don't get a month and they're happy and you're happy and you go forward from there. Okay, real quick, let me get this real quick. Hi, this is Attorney Walter Hnot with Disability Resolution. We are live on YouTube. Would you like to ask me a specific question or would you like to run hearing questions with me? And remember to use a fake name throughout this process. Go ahead.
I would like to ask you a specific question.
Perfect, good sir. Go ahead.
Okay, when I'm on disability, it was because of a commercial motor vehicle accident, and my employer did not have work comp insurance. Therefore, I am going to go against the state's Injured Worker Benefit Fund, which I did win. Now, I don't know how much I will get because it comes from the state, and whatever they have in the coffers is what you get.
Right.
What I'm wondering is how that will affect my SSDI.
So in that case, the same kind of gig, that's probably not countable income. That would be essentially where you have some sort of benefit coming in, which they wouldn't use as a counting option against SGA. So they're not, let's say you're going to get more than $1,350. So you almost certainly. So in that, instance, because it's not countable against the $1,350, then you're good. You get to take it, you get to keep it, you get to put it in the bank, and it's not going to hurt you at all. So you get a pass through with those kinds of things.
The judge awarded me $280,000, but I know good and well with going against the state benefit fund, I'm not going to receive that kind of money.
Right. Probably not. Yeah. So, bottom line though is that's probably not going to be countable. So you're going to be good in that instance. It'll just be a pass through. You'll get the funds. They won't knock you for a month with SSDI. And remember, when it comes to SSDI benefits, the only thing you're going to really get hurt on is for a single month, because, when you have big income coming in over the SGA limit of $1,350, you're not eligible for that month. But then the next month, it becomes a resource. It goes in the bank and sits there and it becomes a resource. When it becomes a resource, they don't care. So with SSDI benefits, that's like one of the most powerful rules of why you'd want to have SSDI benefits and not SSI benefits, is that if they're going to hurt you for having too much income, it's just for that month that you have that big chunk of income. But in your case,
Yes.
this is a non-countable income situation, so this is just a pass-through. That just goes into your bank account. Everybody's happy.
Okay, I was just wondering because I was reading something about some set-aside thing and this and that, so I just thought I'd ask you about that.
Right. I gotcha. Yeah, no worries. But yeah, sounds good, good sir. I'll catch you a little bit later, but you have a wonderful, wonderful night.
You too. Thank you very kindly. Have a great night.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So guys, real quick, one of the main limitations with SSI is that there's a limit on how much you can have in the bank, which is that $2,000. And one of the things that angers, albeit pisses off a lot of people, is that they haven't raised that 2K for a really, really long time. That's why the Supplemental Security Income Restoration Act was a big hit, and then they came out with like a weaker version of that bill. If I'm going to be honest with you guys, what I'm seeing is that the Democratic Party has a lot of really great politicians in it that are for the people. A lot of amazing politicians in it for the people. However, there is a massive chunk of Democrats inside the cult, the extreme left, that have absolutely no interest in helping the people when it comes to Social Security benefits unless it gets them votes for an upcoming election. And what's interesting, you would think, look, things are not good in America right now. Things are horrific right now. Okay. Food is the highest it's been ever in the history of America. It's the highest it's been ever. The amount of increase is the highest it's been in 40 years. And that's only because Jimmy Carter, was epically bad, was worse than this. The truth is, coming into these, November elections, these midterms, I don't know how the Republicans couldn't do well. The economy is completely destroyed. We're facing a super massive deficit that America has never seen before. 10 trillion added on just by Biden being in for the time that he has. We were at 20, now we're at 30 trillion in debt, 500 billion a year as just our interest bill. Think about that. 500 billion a year, just our interest that we got to pay on that. That's what we pay on all of our work product. So there's, in my head, economically, there's no way that the Democrats can really be strong here, right? They're standing on no legs right now. So, if I were a Democrat and I was looking at this thing going, how am I going to win this thing? And remember, Democrats are great at sticking together, right? The Pelosi crew, they do this like no other. The thing that I would be looking at is, who are my voting blocks, right? Who am I going to capture? Who are the young kids that I'm going to make them feel like everything's inclusive? Who are the retired that I'm going to make them feel like we're going to fix the retirement system, their money's not going to run out, everything's going to be fine? Who are the disabled that we want them to feel like, hey, we're going to make it easier for you to get benefits and keep benefits? Who are essentially the non-binary people, and how we're going to go ahead and get them all to vote for us, and all the people that have friends that are non-binary and get them all to vote for us. The Democrats should be trying to appease more groups of people than they actually are right now. And I don't know about you, but it's June 9th. You got June, July, August, September, October. The problem is, somewhere around September, you have to have these things actually passing for people to appreciate them for November. Which means July, these things have to basically hit the hot sheets by September. They're passed, House and Senate and White House, and moving forward. So the problem I foresee is that the Democrats have kind of run out of options for what they're going to do. And here's why. If there was money to spend they would be spending it on the special interest groups that are going to get them elected. That's your retired, that's your disabled, that's your minorities, and that's your youth. That's the bottom line. Across the board, they would be pushing the agenda for those particular groups to vote Democrat. Now, I think what happened was President Biden did a lot of big suggestions. Some of them were promises, and he didn't meet those suggestions and he didn't meet those promises. President Biden is a professional politician. That's not saying anything insulting. He is one of the longest sitting politicians in the history of American political landscapes, right? Politicians are traditionally very good at, in my opinion, grabbing low-hanging fruit. You know, like how when the SSA did that whole thing, right, where they were like, hey, we're going to change our website to show, like, is it him, her, they, them, you know, all that stuff. And they added, like, what their preference of, you know, how they should be interacted with onto their website to show inclusion. That's a low-hanging fruit thing. One of the things that I think was a big difference between Biden and Trump was that Biden has always been a low-hanging fruit guy. He's always been a low-hanging fruit guy. He's made a lot of big promises, but he's always been a low-hanging fruit guy. I personally believed with presidency, right? The highest, most powerful person on planet Earth, the thing that is the most fought over thing on planet Earth, the guy that has the keys to the most sacred things and destruction on planet Earth, I thought that he would make good on a lot more promises to the disabled and the retired. I was wrong. I was wrong. I admit it. I've admitted it. I've admitted it before. I was wrong. You were facing two particular massive fighting forces, right? You had 80s style corporate Trump. A lot of people didn't like him in the female sector because he reminded them of all those guys that were, you know, egotistical, kind of like brutish, and I'm going to do it my way, and I'm not caring about what you think. He reminded them of that type of guy. And then Biden, on the other hand, was little old grandpa, and they felt safe with the identity of little old grandpa. And you had these two styles, right? Trump obviously was facing, you know, extreme situations. January 6th, New York was just coming after him left and right, still to some degree coming after him, although he has won some stuff there. So, you know, the bottom line is Trump was facing massive legal battles, right? I mean, a normal person like me could never fight all those legal battles that he had to fight. Just unfathomable to have to go through that. At the same time, you had Biden with this massive Ukraine situation. We can now safely say the news hid it. The news hid the whole thing with his son and the Asian women and all that stuff and the stuff on the laptop. All of that was hidden by Facebook, by Twitter. And as a result of that, unfortunately, it's one of the reasons I'm afraid of Twitter. I don't go on Twitter. I don't use Twitter because it scares me. It scares me because they could just get 100,000 bots to go and leave negative reviews all over the place. And then, you know, they would destroy, you know, the online that I've spent years building of positive reviews, of just working my butt off day and night. So, you know, to some degree, I've been afraid, you know. So I guess the bottom line here is what we had to choose from was more of Commissioner Saul under Trump, even though Commissioner Saul was supposed to last more years if Biden had won, although Biden fired him and put Commissioner Kijikazi in. So we had more of Commissioner Saul, who was basically making it so that disability law for attorneys was a non-viable field of law. We were literally right up against that. We were all facing, how are we going to get out of it? In fact, a lot of the attorneys you see doing disability law online or not online or whatever in offices, they all have a side hustle now, whether it's VA benefits or workers' comp benefits or LTD benefits or whatever. They all have a side hustle now because disability benefits were just dead. They were dying. You couldn't practice it. You couldn't make enough money. You still can't really make enough money doing it. So at the end of the day, we were faced with a situation where the field of disability was going to become hyper efficient. so much to the point where people were just not going to be using the program and applying for it like they used to, which the government would then not have to spend as much money for the disabled through Commissioner Saul. Or we had Biden, who was promising essentially less CDRs, increase in SSI benefits, all these things that needed to happen to make the program be greased better, to work better. I look at it this way. You can fight fraud, reduce the entrance numbers, but you don't have to screw over the people that are truly disabled while doing it. And there was a lot of that, in my opinion, of screwing the people over who were actually disabled during the Commissioner Saul era. And as a result of that, what we ended up with was, okay, a lot of people were just, hand over fist, hand over fist, hand over fist getting denied that should have never been denied to begin with. And that's because, in my opinion, I guess I got flagged. I don't know. I'm not sure if you didn't get flagged by me, so I don't know what that. Yeah, Piltdown Posse, you didn't get flagged by me. So the bottom line is this, and I haven't read through all the top chat stuff. I'm just talking to guys, but the bottom line is this: I think Commissioner Kijikazi is a much better option for the Social Security Administration. But I will say this: the economic principles that Biden has been promoting are literally killing this country, and as a result of that, fixed income people are getting the most effed out of everybody. Food is not affordable. It's not affordable. It's now a real financial thing for me where I have to account for it just like you guys do. But you guys obviously have it way worse. When it comes down to essentially fuel, and the truth is, we didn't need Russia during Trump. We didn't. We really didn't all need a lot of the resources that Ukraine had as well. And what I've kind of realized with this whole situation is that America is such a massive country that if we were to just start ramping up all of these warehouses and industries and things like that, we could make it work. We could make it work. We could make amazing products. We could build beautiful ships to beautiful, products that we buy overseas. And what we could do is basically make it so that the tax exchange worked to our advantage. It would be a little bit more expensive to buy the American made, but we could still make it work. But the reality is, we'll never get there. And that's because of the gridlock, which helps in many ways, but in this way, it doesn't help. The gridlock that happens with these politicians. We could do a lot of things to fix this. We could go ahead and make it so that every single bill that's passed is only so many pages. That way they can only put so much in a single bill for that specific topic, as opposed to having bills that are literally this tall off the ground of paper. We could do that because the politicians don't read all that. The politicians get pressured by the people to pass it so that they get stimulus money, and then the people get effed out of their rights. That's how it works. That's how you do it. And they do it all the time to people. So at the end of the day, my feeling is that Biden is not a great president for what we have right now, because Biden's only going to be a good president for when the chips are up, right? When the chips are up and we have money to spend, he's a great president for that because he can spend it on these programs to help us. But the problem is we don't need a Biden right now. We are more in debt than we can even pay back. This is going to sound weird, but the U.S. is actually facing a situation in the not too distant future where it won't be able to afford paying for its debt, like the interest that it has to pay each year. We won't be able to afford paying our interest debt to countries like Russia, which is one of them, China, India, etc. We won't be able to pay our debt to these other countries, which means that we have essentially two options. We can either not pay it, or three options: pay a portion of it, or the third option is find a way to pay it. And let me tell you what that means if we can't pay it and the politicians decide that we are going to pay it. What that means is that you, the people, will get less of the benefits you are accustomed to. Taxes will increase. which means the standard of living goes down because the taxes are higher, and the standard of living goes down because more programs are doing less. The agencies are giving you less. A lot of people don't realize this, but what we're facing is a situation where at $500 billion just in interest alone that has to be paid, when we increase that just slightly more, we're not able to meet doing that unless magically we start having a lot more people making money, making products, selling product in this nation. Now, there's a couple of ways you could do that. A lot of individuals brought into this country from South America and other places, immigrants, putting them to work and then taxing them is one way to do that. That's a great way of increasing work product, right? Which increases taxes, which increases our ability to pay our debt. Okay. But a lot of the people that are coming from these third world countries are going directly onto SSI for a certain period of years, which is actually a drain and not a benefit increase. So what's happening now is we've got like a problem. And the problem is at some point we're going to have to like pay back this stuff. Or potentially we could have a war. We could have a giant war where essentially we go to war with China, we go to war with Russia, we go to war with India, and we essentially try to some degree, claim that we don't owe them any money back. Trillions of dollars not owed in debt because we're at war with them. So as a reality, the thing is this: we either go to war, we find more immigrants to create more work product, we start pushing people to work more in this nation, and or we can't pay back our debt, which means that for the first time in a very long time, we would not be able to pay essentially our credit card bill to the other countries. So what happens now is we need a great, and I don't want to make it seem like it's only one guy that can do this, but we need a great, amazing economy person. And it doesn't have to be just the prior administration's president. It could be anybody. It could be anybody that comes in. Could be a Democrat that comes in and is really, really smart about the economy. But we need a really strong political economy person to come in. And frankly, guys, don't take this the wrong way, but we need to vote out every single politician that we have in there now. Their hands are all covered in the red of putting us in this position. They got in, they followed the leader, which followed the money, which got them in to keep funding them and keep playing the game. They got in, and they have all these magical health insurance benefits, magical pension benefits, etc. We have to vote them all out, and we have to restrict their benefits. We have to end superiority of the politicians. If we are to have American exceptionalism again, where we have great lives and countries respect us and countries, don't want to go to war with us, then what we have to do to some degree is first clean house. We have to get rid of the politicians who are dripping with international deals that do not help the average American. We have to get rid of politicians because the only way to erase the chalkboard of all those people who basically are paid for through the years to keep taking the position over and over, that's the only way to get rid of them. I mean, look, let me put it to you this way. How many of you want to have a king or a queen sit on the throne of America? None of you want to have a king or a queen. Nobody wants a king or a queen. Well, what is a politician that continues to be the governor, continues to be a senator, continues to be a House rep? Well, I guess governor is not one, but the point is continuously get voted in over and over and over again. No term limits. That's a king. That's a queen. That's what it is. That's what it is. That's the bottom line. So the problem is, at the end of the day, we have to fix our economy. It doesn't have to be the prior administration, but we just have to have somebody fix this economy. And I'll tell you exactly what fixing the economy looks like. It's paying off trillions of dollars worth of debt while somehow continuing to keep everything going. It's making sure that the OASDI trust funds, your retirement, your disability insurance benefit trust fund, is full all the way to 2100. Making sure people are safe all the way to 2100. It's basically increasing tariffs on other countries so that the production of items in this country make more sense to make it here, whether it's making it to completion or making parts of it here at least. All of that stuff is absolutely crucial to basically increasing our work product. When we send our products overseas to be made by somebody else, when we have a bunch of sheep, right? And those sheep, we take the wool and we send it overseas and then it comes back as products. We've missed a massive opportunity. And one of our largest exports is wool. And the problem with that is that every step that you take out of this country of making the product is a step where you've lost an opportunity to go ahead and essentially make a heck of a lot of money for the country. So let me give you an example. Let's take the wool, right? So you've got a sheep, you shave the sheep, you've got wool. That's your raw material. Your raw material then, when it gets shipped overseas, you lose power. They get to have it, they buy it super cheap, they make products, they send it back, we buy them, we've lost the power at that point. It's like any company that makes anything. If a company is able to make everything down to the final product and then sell the final product, all of the work product and the increased capability of selling things goes way up, right? Then we don't need a ton of immigrants to magically come into this country and start working to increase things. We have basically a situation where we can keep our raw material and make products. Now, the counter to that is, of course, what do we do? What do we do when, we can't make the products cheap enough because our minimum wage is so much more, right? They're costing $1 or $2 an hour, whereas we're costing $10 an hour. The thing Americans have to realize is that the minimum wage is something that exists to go ahead and control how much companies have to spend to make a product. And the arguments that one side will always say is, well, look at all the super rich CEOs. And the arguments that the other side will say, well, look at all the small and mid-sized companies that can't afford to give all the benefits and the pay increases to employees. And the reality that it all comes down to is that the super mega companies, they figured out how to take over the industry. And they can afford to do all these health benefits. They can afford to do all these, special additions and pensions and 401ks for their employees. But small and mid-sized businesses, most of them can't. So then we had this tailored approach, right? You're either up here, you have this many employees, you don't have this many employees. We're getting back to this whole approach of, how do we make this work for people who haven't taken over an industry yet? Everybody knows what Lowe's and Home Depot are. But do you remember for your area, in your town, what the local hardware store used to be called? If your town's been around for 100 years, I guarantee you there was a local hardware store that existed in that town. I guarantee it. I know mine. It's Andy's right down the road from where I'm at in NJ right now. Andy's. Is it that now? No, hasn't been that for decades. Why? It's because of Lowe's and Home Depot. They beat the system. So the point is this: at the end of the day, we have to get rid of the current politicians. We have to redirect funds specifically to the benefit of the American people. We have to keep more raw materials and make products off of them that can be sold in stores here. And we have to some degree, enable small and mid-sized businesses to be able to compete against the big mega businesses. How do you compete against Walmart, one of the most efficient businesses out there? How do you compete against Amazon, one of the most efficient businesses out there? Well, all you have is Walmart competing against Amazon. And Amazon will probably at some point win. And the reason why is the return policy, the quick shipping. I mean, when drones start delivering stuff, which is happening in the not too distant future, where they just drop stuff off at your front door, take a quick picture as they're taking off. When that happens, guys, nobody's going to be going to Walmart. You're just going to go online on your phone, order the stuff, drone's going to drop it off. So the point is, the only way to save the disabled and the retired and the fixed income is to basically have a better economy. And I'm not saying we need an 80s style, aggressive, capitalist, person who's taken a chunk of money that he had and turned it into billions. You know, when people tell me, oh, he's never done anything with his life, his entire life has been a business meeting. You know, it's like when people tell me, you know, Elon's never created anything in his life. Elon has created more programs than most programmers. So, you know, and I don't mean just like, you know, programs where somebody's doing something in a company. I mean, like he typed out code to create programs. So the point that I see more lies on the left. I'm just going to say it. I see more lies in the media on the left side. The CBS, the CNNs, there's more lies going on there in the media. It also doesn't help that a lot of the things that everybody thought the right side was crazy about, like the Ukraine thing with, you know, with Biden and his son, or, you know, the deals with Russia and the attorneys and the collusion that occurred potentially with, you know, the Clintons. It doesn't help that a lot of that stuff points to them being right. But there's an easy fix to all of this. We know that when somebody reaches the level of president, they don't really get in trouble. We know that. We got that, right? You get to be president. We're not going to let America get made fun of as a result of a president doing something wrong. So they get a pass, right? We put on a dog and pony show. We involve the courts. The courts don't actually, you know, resolve the thing in the proper sense. They just let people kind of, you know, be let go at that level. That's because, to be fair, we don't want international embarrassment on behalf of the United States. Let me be clear. You're never going to see Hillary in jail. You're never going to see Trump in jail. You're never going to see Biden, Obama, any of those people in jail. That's just not going to happen. But if you vote everybody that's currently in out, you've reset the table. You've reset the chessboard. The players playing the chess pieces, well, they have to make all new connections. They got to do it fast. But we can restrict that and we can change it to be for the benefit of the people. Look, America is the richest country on earth. There's no reason why every person in America couldn't have $1,000 check every single month. But I'll ask you this. When everybody thought that that was a good baseline, we all know now that $1,000 a month ain't enough. What was 2 years ago would have been fine. Now we know it's not enough, not even close. That's due to poor management. And you could call it, you know, executive management because Biden's behind it. You could call it, you know, oh, he's got all these things, the Ukraine and Russia and Putin hates him and blah, blah, blah. Look, when you're the most powerful man on earth, which is what he is, you have ways to get around a lot of this stuff. So I want to point out when people, all right, look, there's another thing too I want to point out. And this is because I have a Jewish background. As you guys know, I come from a Jewish mother, Jewish faith. I practice it. The point is this. During the worst of times my people have gone through 5,000, 6,000, 7,000. You keep counting. The more history we find out, the more my people have been slaves. But the point is this. You have to understand something. There was a methodology used during World War II. And the methodology used was that this horrible figure, this terrible, evil person named Hitler, he would instruct all the people in charge of his propaganda to spread to all the German people that he was not able to watch what all of his troops were doing. So when a lot of his troops were bad to the German people, when they were mean and aggressive and would push them and throw them and scream at them, right? When that would happen, they were instructed as part of the propaganda that Hitler's eyes couldn't be everywhere. Hitler couldn't see everything, right? And the idea behind that was that if only Hitler could have been there, right, for his German people, then these bad things that his SS troops were doing to them would have been punished. I see a lot of that shit going on today with the left side. I see a lot of that going on today with the left side. I see a lot of the articles that come out. The articles are all about this. Let's look at it from this direction of, hey, you know, it looks like this, it smells like this, kind of feels like this, but it's not because of this. Guys, a famous phrase from my family is, it's hard to argue with success. I don't know if there's any success that's occurred with this administration that's measurable, that's meaningful in like a big time sense. And maybe he made too many promises, maybe whatever, but then I'm doing the same thing that Hitler did with his SS troops. I'm defending a person on the understanding that, hey, maybe if only he knew, he could fix it. Maybe if only his eyes could see it, he would fix it. And we would punish his soldiers for doing these things. Biden's soldiers, they're politicians. They're people in the agencies. Some of them are amazing people. Some of them are amazing people. Okay? You can't blame all these government people on what's going on up here. I'm going to tell you something. When I talk with a lot of SSA people, they don't know about any of these acts. These acts of, increasing benefits or changing the programs or, changing how the system works for the SSI people or SSDI. They don't know about them because that's not their thing. Their thing is just processing the thing that's in front of them, what they've been trained to do. A lot of these people in these agencies aren't part of this stuff. So I guess I've gone way too far on talking about this. I'm going to call the security expert at this point. But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, what we need is something that's going to save the economy. And the only thing that can save the economy is basically to keep more raw materials here, make more products, make more in-house stuff, and then work better deals internationally. But I don't know if you guys have noticed with the whole international currency problem that we have, China is going their own way. Russia is going with China. Africa, the continent, is going with China. The Middle East is leaning towards China. India has started to show leanings towards China. That means gasoline, if we lose the US dollar as the international currency. Okay, so let me do a quick little side note here. This is how it works. And I know you guys have seen this in other channels or whatever, but I'll do the summarized version. There was a moment in history where other countries couldn't afford to keep their economy on the gold standard because they didn't have basically enough gold, right? In order to keep your currency on the gold standard, you got to match your currency to how much gold you have. Well, America had a lot of gold because it was paid to them for a bunch of different reasons. So America was used as the gold standard, right? The gold standard because our economy was still going to stay on the gold standard. And the promise was that we were going to keep it like that. And then we broke our promise. So the bottom line is everybody was using the US dollar as the gold standard that we would trade against. They would buy US tender to do international trade. So the US dollar was all over the place. Nixon got us off of the gold standard. When that happened, we basically were no longer relevant as to the reason we were originally on the gold standard. But everybody was using US, tender, US dollars. So whatever, it's fine. That's okay. We'll just stick with the US dollar. But the problem is this. Now China wants to do their US version of their economy as the fundamental, tender that's traded between international countries. Frankly, they're probably going to be successful. I don't know how long they're going to be successful. They've got a lot of problems with their age issue. They got a lot of old people there that are no longer producing. Got a lot of people basically that aren't filling these ghost towns. They've got a lot of problems. They're not doing as great as everybody thinks they are. But the reality is this. If Russia joins with China and Africa goes with China and the Middle East goes with China and basically India goes with China, then it's just the European groups and the US. And maybe South America with the US. Maybe. And that's not enough to support what we have here. And if that happens, we can't afford to pay back our debts. Our credit card bill, the interest payments we're supposed to pay, we won't be able to afford them. So the problem that we are now facing is if we lose international currency preference, which is what it is, right? We're preferred use of international currency. If we lose that, then our gasoline goes up to $10 a gallon, our food doubles or triples in price, all that stuff. Now, I want to point out something to you guys that a lot of channels don't talk about. I just want to point this out, okay? if something like this happened with Russia, and there was a country that basically was being shunned by a bunch of other countries, what is that shunned country likely to do? It gives them every emphasis, if they're not allowed to use US tender to buy things internationally, it gives them every emphasis to start their own thing. When that group starts their own thing or agrees with another country to join another country in trade, what happens is you've essentially set up a perfect chess checkmate for the US to lose, because you've set the chessboard so that Russia has absolutely no benefit of staying with the US tender because they can't use it. Everybody's restricted them. China is offering them a way out, and they're going to have to take it. It's classic chess maneuvers. So right now, Russia's in check. They might not be able to pay their bills or their interest payments. They've got a huge one coming up that's $400 billion that has to be paid. Russia's in check. When they can't pay that, they're at checkmate. They're going to go straight to China, and they're going to do their own thing with China. Africa has had billions and billions of dollars invested into it from China to create infrastructure. Africa then kicked out a lot of Chinese infrastructure because they wanted to do their own thing. India is a mass production group. They're fine. They're good. They've got raw products. They've got final products. They're good. China, raw products, final products. They're good. Middle East, they've got a lot to trade because they've got a lot of oil. We lived in this like perfect bubble of happiness because, look, putting it simply, when we went into the Middle East, we got a lot of great oil deals. And we lived off of those for a really long time, and we were happy. And now we found more oil reserve options in Texas. Cool, we'll be okay for a while. But the bottom line about this is that the US, it appears, in my opinion, and I've been talking about this for 8 years now, is about to lose. The US is about to lose what made them the most powerful country on earth. It's not Elon. It's that the US dollar was the standard for international trade, which means that other countries no longer have to buy US dollars to trade with each other, which means that they're going to have, when they switch to like a Chinese-based tender, they're not going to have to, and we don't know if it's going to be their current money system. It might be something new that they create to share with all these other nations. But when they do this, okay, what will happen is Russia will have all this US money. China will have all this US money in reserve. Africa will have all this US money in reserve. India will have all this US money in reserve. And of course, the Middle East will have a bunch of US money in reserve, especially from all the stuff Biden left there when he left, Afghanistan, Iraq, all of that. We don't know how involved it really was. We just know a lot of gear was left there that we hope is not working. We hope. So, and chunks of money too. You see the videos where it's literally just blocks and blocks of cash in the Middle East were left there. So as a result of that, what's happening is now all these countries will have a significant amount of US tender, US money that they've bought over the years for international trade purposes. And as a result of that, that money will basically get flooded into the markets. And when it gets flooded into the markets, it's going to be faster than printing money. And when it's faster than printing money, unfortunately, it's going to completely destroy the dollar, which means the dollar isn't going to be worth anything, which means things that are of value that are not our currency should be okay to some degree, but our dollar is not going to be able to afford traditional food. That's how bad it will be. That's what's really going to be happening in the future. Adam Brock said India is smart. You're absolutely right. They are very smart. China, very smart. Russia did a very dumb thing, but that dumb thing is going to equate to them doing very well with China, which is why, as I watch this whole thing happening, I know that at the end of this game, basically those people on retirement, that money that they get is not going to be worth much. It's going to be worth hardly anything. So That's the big problem. That's the big issue. All right, let's go talk specifically to the gentleman who handles, what's going on over in the Ukraine war, because the Ukraine war actually dictates how we're doing as an American country, and how the disabled and the retired, how much their money is worth at the end of the day. So let's go ahead and talk with that gentleman real quick and begin the process of figuring out what's going on over there, because it's not in the news like it used to be. And that's because shootings are in the news constantly. So let's see if we can get a hold of the gentleman.
Shops com 10-7, 10-7. Sean, bring us down 7. Transfer, Leo 4-0-0-4-0.
Perfect, good sir. So how are we doing today?
Greetings, Walter.
Howdy, howdy.
Everyone. CJ Lewis here. Thank you again on behalf of the entire group for allowing us to sit in with you, giving you some contemporary intel from both the war in Ukraine, Russia, and the unbelievable rippling effects around the world, including the United States, America, Canada, EU, AU. We've gotten to a situation here, at least in our shops, that the war has become obviously a very large piece, and we try to remain focused to our individual clients and their specific needs regarding everything from defense to spending and resources for refugees, affecting the global market, right down to the folks taking refuge, civilians that are on both sides of the border there in refugee countries, including the families, the children. And as we spoke in the past, we've got an update to share with you. Folks with disabilities, and some of the resources that our shops here have accessed, and will become an inclusive part, greater inclusive part with our updates as they become available for you and folks dialing in, looking for information, so they can get an idea not only how it may impact them domestically in the United States and countries that offer disability programs, that I think might be a touch surprised, the volume and the folks that we've reached out to and the representation that they do echo. Let me start. Most of the information that has been prepared for this evening has come in just in the last, I'd say over 80, 90% of this has come in just in the last probably 5 hours. That's how quickly things are moving back and forth. Our day number 106 that began back February 24th. Unprovoked attack by Russia on the country of Ukraine, as we know. Currently, the battle for the Donbass region, which is from Belarus all the way down to the Sea of Azov. Currently, the majority of the most difficult fighting is taking place in two cities separated by the Seversky Donetsk River in central Donbass region, eastern Ukraine. It's the focal point of this tremendous battle of weeks of bombardment, and most of the civilians have got away. Some are taking refuge in the Soviet era air shelter, subterranean air shelter beneath Azov steel, which is not to be confused with the Mariupol one we spoke of for several weeks. President Zelensky from Ukraine refers to these two cities on both sides of the river as quote-unquote dead cities. They're fighting heavily again. Last week we dialed in and we were actually watching some of the fighting that took place between Ukraine and supporting services versus Russian troops. And they are definitely back to heavy urban and guerrilla warfare right in the streets. We've got video and live feeds, and just the way they're moving around. Ukrainian soldiers are like racing out to breakneck speeds in all types of vehicles, and around corners and courtyards, and then they pile up, and then they run for cover. And Russian artillery is trying to get a fix to take out the buildings, and Russian artillery is just flattening absolutely everything they can find in these two cities. It's just unbelievable. They're opening fire as Ukraine's are trying to make strategic moves in either forward movement or better cover to cover themselves. Everything from some of the fiercest fighting that we've seen, but they're actually prepared to place a hand grenade in a cup between the two seats and a pistol in the back seat. And this is how they're driving around the city in case there's an issue. Just getting from block to block. Very tenuous fighting. You have on the hills overlooking the city. Severodonetsk, smoke from just hundreds of fires from back and forth combat, and with this supply route just a little bit to the west, it's just filled with burnt out vehicles. I'm sure that some of that video has gotten out. Burnt vehicles, vehicles still on fire, all hit by Russian artillery. As we were taking the reports in, we were in reviewing. We could actually hear in our comms, communications, I should say, metal explosions of the incoming shells ringing out every 2 to 3 minutes. Just very clear what Russia's goal is, and it's just flatten the cities, just right flatten it, and slowly and methodically continuing to march westward to get across this river. Ukraine's strategy, Ukraine's strategy. They have a limited amount of military significance in the region in the last few days. But comments made by President Zelensky of pulling out of the area, long-term risks of doing so. It's just not what Ukraine's looking to do. Last evening, the area swung back and forth. Who had possession? In many ways, the fate of the Donbass region is, as we talked about, it became a land bridge for Russia, so they could take over the ports and the Sea of Azov, or both sides of Crimea into the Black Sea, and the naval ships continue to fight primarily in the Odessa, Moldova, western part of the Black Sea. It's difficult. Further comments in review from President Zelensky as they're trying to defend the positions, trying to inflict significant losses on the enemy, but he's indicating this is a very fierce battle, and he's indicating, as he's fit with some of the others similar to Mariupol, probably one of the most difficult throughout the war. A lot of mixed signals, but they, as a country, they said we can't afford to lose their best sons and daughters. Russia says the same thing, but there's no reduction in the fighting. Just a lot of words. It appears statistically, Ukrainian soldiers were passing away on the battlefield at approximately 100 Ukrainian soldiers per day.
Wow!
And we have high probability validity in the 90s, 90 percentile. But that number is a true number. Russia won't report theirs, but our sources indicate when a tank goes up or a line of column of tank goes up or attacked or burnt out, you do the calculations, but no real gain in reporting that. It's what the fight is about in these two areas. Again, Russia's tactical movement of just moving slow, trying to take some ground, flattening these towns, and then Ukraine just taking advantage of the supply of, I'll call, modern weapons, Western weapons that have been shipped. And that's what we're using to try and slow the incursion of Russian troops and to stave the battle, if you will. To the challenges, like I said, we're pretty far in, or 100 plus days. It's just a little difficult. Russia is indicating they have over 1,100 cases of potential quote-unquote crimes against peace committed by captured Ukraine service people. And they're paving the way for they started just a day or so ago paving the way for what we'll call, I should say, mass trials of these people, of these folks. Just trying to make an example of them. When we look back, we have the Mrs. Bezegal. She's the deputy head of Secretary of Defense and Intelligence Committee in Ukraine Parliament, and she's indicating, although she's not going to disclose the troop numbers, several thousand Ukraine soldiers are now deployed in this battle, and they're at the risk of being surrounded. We've seen it before. We saw it in Kyiv, where they were almost completely encircled, and then for some reason they had an opportunity, or Russian troops did not close the loop and give them an opportunity to move out of the area. We're seeing something very similar here, and that's our validity and our intelligence here validates Ms. Bezegal's difficult name. I'm sorry if she's listening. Ms. Bezegal's position that they're heading to encircle them as this fight continues. And it comes back to the billions of dollars, and they're just waiting for more aid, and they're waiting for more weapons, and being flown in as quickly as it can. Poland, again, has provided tanks and armored vehicles, and Norway has sent self-propelled howitzers and parts and ammunition. And we've been sending towed howitzers in, as well as Britain, and multiple organizations with rocket launchers and drones. And the Boxer drones are really doing a tremendous job, absolutely tremendous job. 5 hours ago, GMT, as we were talking about the mass trials for crimes, Ukraine actually had, Russia actually came out and took a position with 3 individuals that were put on trial for crimes, and they were given, we'll say, death sentence, 2 Brits and a Moroccan for crimes against Russia. They're called mercenaries, put on a show-and-go Soviet-style, old Soviet era mock trial, and basically condemned to a death sentence. So it's, I think we'll see more of this coming as it goes on, but it's just, it's a little bit different to see them just take these random 3 folks, one of which had relocated back in 2019 for a better life. So this trial was just a little difficult. British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss indicated that the verdict was a sham judgment with no legitimacy, and then it just goes on. The 2 Brits were one was 28, one was 48. I don't have an age on the Moroccan gentleman, but they had all immigrated there. They're at homes, and they're fighting for their adopted country's army before they were caught up in this. And BBC, basically, Boris comes out with, we validated with the BBC early, and they said it's basically his quote is prisoners of war shouldn't be exploited for political purposes. And I want to thank him and the BBC for sharing those comments. And then we take a look back and we see that these guys are really protected as prisoners under the Geneva Conventions. But as we know from our previous calls, one side of the war understands it, and the other side doesn't appear to be paying much attention to the Russians. Just kind of on their own track with it. And then so the prisoners of war, for those who are not too familiar with Geneva Convention, prisoners of war, they've got to be treated humanely. They've got to be protected from violence, intimidation, insults, public curiosity. And they've got to be provided, as we know, with shelter, food, clothing, and medical care, and we kind of know quite a bit about it. But even folks from our representative from Amnesty International said this is just blatant violation of international humanitarian law. So it's difficult. It's difficult to see it. It's difficult to hear it. And so we're gonna kind of I think we made our point, and a little bit on Geneva Convention, going back to the end of the first two world wars is where it was established. For humanitarian reasons. 5 hours ago, again, Ukraine is now fighting on both sides of the villages, and they successfully, there's my update, replied to Russian attack on the village of Toshikiva on the northwest outskirts of Severodonetsk, which is kind of a new area on the river that Russia was making a big push for. Currently, Ukraine was able to keep that under control, according to General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine said in his operational update that we got about 5 hours ago. He also included that 6 hours ago, Kyiv's in no danger, but they're remaining prepared. So as they pulled all the troops out of Kyiv and pulled them out of the northern regions and started shipping them down south to engage in the lower Donbass area that we talked about last week and the week before. As we know, Russia likes to tell us they're moving all the troops, and then they leave a bunch behind to try and attack. Very interesting. The Interior Minister, Montesquieu, indicated to us that they're not letting their guard down, but there's no imminent attack in the city. And as we know, if they take the capital of Kyiv, which was their attempt, they would be able to control the government. Russia believe they could control the government, but it's guarded. And he says, despite the Russian airstrikes, could come at any time. They are prepared in that city for the best they can. 6 hours ago, which conflicts with 12 hours ago. 12 hours ago, Russia was convincing Ukraine that they could export their grain and through the ports. We're going to let you take all that grain that you've collected, and we're going to let you export it and feed parts of the world. 6 hours ago, our representatives from the TASS news agency did verify that in the Luhansk region of Ukraine, they're liberating the grain, quote unquote, liberating the grain to Russia, and they're going to be sending a historical moment, they're calling it, and they're calling it the first shipment, or they call them wagons, but we call it shipments of grain will go to Russia.
No.
With more than 3,000 tons of grain just in the first 50 cars. So it's they offered assurances that the ports wouldn't be attacked, and we got folks from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It's a organization that meets in Paris to get the assurances, and the Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi was like, we're going to get this in order for you, so don't get attacked as the grain cargoes go out. And then here 6 hours later, they've been liberated. They've been liberated from the burden of exporting their own grain and wheat, so they can go over to Russia. And what's the impact? Let's just for a brief moment, we're going to touch on the impact and how it affects the economy there and the ripple effect. So we do know what comes out of there. We talked about microchip grade neon gas, and we talked about palladium and getting the microchips produced that are used in industry, as well as everything from, I'll say, television and electronics all the way up. But this shortage of these two products is creating mayhem, and there's not too many places that can source that neon gas and the palladium for those microchips. But what's the effect overseas, and then what's the ripple effect coming here? And I do have from our monitor shop that you were talking about the cost of fuel, and earlier in your call, cost of fuel, and some of the anticipation by financial, global financial, JP Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs, and what they anticipate for fuel, and we'll circle back on fuel. But here they've come out with the International Monetary Fund is forecasting that the contraction in Ukraine's reduction, if you will, in Ukraine's gross domestic product of over 35%. They anticipate a decline as much as 45 to 50%. 45 to 50% of their gross domestic product
big.
will be impacted. Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. And we think about it and say, oh, okay, well, what's it mean here? Well, it's that tilt of the apple cart, if you will. I think you used different terms earlier. I'm just kind of getting a thumbs up from the monitoring shop indicating we touched on this well, and how this affects, okay, who gets the money and what's the money called at that point. I got a note here that says somebody in your comments was talking about crypto, somebody was talking about gold and silver and fishing hooks and bullets, and what will be the currency? What will be the currency? And then how do we continue to make sure that the payments that, I'll talk about the United States of America if we can, the payments that were paid in by employees over the years for their Social Security programs that was matched by their employers in U.S. dollars and paid for in U.S. dollars, and how will it be paid forward if the economy in that country turns away from the American dollar? What will be the currency? We did see the move by Russia and President Putin to only accept rubles to try and support for gas exports from his country, and that didn't turn out too well for him. He had a difficult time with it. So that's a rhetorical question, but just something to keep in mind as far as domestic product. 8 hours ago, Russia is still using Belarus airfield. Belarus sits up on the edge of the Baltics, with on the most northern portion, adjacent to Ukraine, and they're using the airfields up there to stage, according to Mr. Hamarov. He's the general staff of the Armed Forces for Ukraine. But they said he did tell us that the Russian aircraft are launching from Belarus to deploy missiles into Ukraine, and it's Russian army continues an assault operation. What they're trying to do is have enough range from Belarus to control that Severodonetsk area, but they're not very successful just yet in that attacks. But it is a concern, and it's recognizable. And General Staff has been very kind to sharing specific pieces of information with the shops here on different levels. 8 hours ago, Russia indicated that there's a direct military clash over cyber attacks. I pause with purposes. They've warned everybody but themselves that cyber attacks against its infrastructure lead directly to military confrontation. That attempts to challenge Russia, or Moscow, if I should say, in the cyber sphere could be and would be met with targeted countermeasures. And they point directly at the United States of America and Ukraine as being responsible, according to the Russia critical infrastructure. And their last quote, which was interesting, was, "Rest assured, Russia," direct quote from the shop to us, so is, "Russia will not leave aggressive actions unanswered. All of our steps will be measured, targeted, in accordance with our Russian," the comments are coming from Russian official, legislation, international law. So don't send your cyber attacks there, is what they're saying. But okay, that was interesting. Yeah, it's just okay. Thanks. I guess we've never heard of the cyber attacks thing, but there are folks in North America that have grave concerns over cyber attack being a greater piece to everything from electrical grids to banking to supply chain. and that in itself could be an issue, but that's conjecture at this point. And as we roll, if something comes up immediately, obviously, Walter, you will be, once we get our clients on board, you'll be inclusive in that. Very unusual piece taking place in the Baltic Sea. Dozens, 60 ships, 40 aircraft have decided it was time to practice on the training grounds in Kaliningrad and then use the Baltic fleet for training tasks for the defense of sea lanes and fleet bases. Where is this taking place? In the Baltic Sea. Who's in the Baltic Sea? Sweden and Finland.
Yeah.
Didn't they just announce a bid to join NATO?
Yeah.
I think they just announced a bid. So the Navy drills from the Russians are taking place right in the sea there. And the tensions are high because you've got the Russian ships, and then this is right after this whole campaign started. And the only one trying to block their membership is Turkey. And it's a little frustrating. If it's approved, Russia would be the only non-NATO country on the Baltic. But it's a sign of support for Finland and Sweden. And remarkably, United States Chief of Staff General Mark Milley was in Stockholm on Saturday aboard one of the aircraft carriers. Actually, it's the largest U.S. warship ever to dock in Stockholm. And his visit came as, who's conducting naval exercises in the Baltic Sea? Oh, yeah, that's right. NATO in the United States of America. And those naval exercises, called Ball Tops 22, are set to continue until June 17th. So I guess there's a lot of warships in and about the Baltics. Just amazing. Just to, okay, let's find a smaller pond to go practice our exercises, potentially against each other side by side. Interesting choice. And then we have 4 submarines, Russian submarines suddenly showing up off the coast of Finland all at once. And then we've got rockets being thrown by North Korea, then South Korea, and the United States are like, okay, we're going to throw some rockets to show we can throw some rockets too. And everybody throws them in the sea, and that was a great display of that. And I'm sorry for it sounds like emotional sarcasm.
It's
just a little. Somebody had to pay for those, and not really too sure which country was paying for it, but I think that's we talk about taxation a lot in a lot of the countries, and I'm sure those weren't donated by the defense contractors for practice. On a different note, we had another Russian military commander, Major General Kuzov, was killed by Ukraine's forces. Just validated, took a little bit to get validated, but apparently he was commanding the Russian Fifth Army and led his people into an attack, and sniper got him. He is now the 12th general validated for dying on the battlefield since February 24th, and was a very senior Russian military commander. This all took place in the Donetsk region of Donbass, and then just a day or so before him was Lieutenant General Roman Berdnikov, was reportedly killed by artillery in that same area.
And that was the general,
total two,
right?
No, the Lieutenant General. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So we had a Major General, that was Kudov, and then we had Lieutenant General Berdnikov, both killed within a few days. I think that's either 12 or 13 Russian generals, not including other commanders. Then we add in, we've talked about the Wagner Group before. Very early on, I think we talked about a group of mercenaries that are being funded by as an oligarch, which gave the ability to deny that the Wagner Group was actually on the battlefield. This group of mercenaries, they go back to, I'm going to say, Syria conflict, 2014, maybe even a little bit further back than that. They originally started as a small group we were to several thousand at the beginning of this conflict. I think we placed the number they originally reported as 2,000. It was up to 5,000. We've seen it reported as high as 10,000. Their leader is a very close, or was a very close friend of President Putin. Gentleman's name that kind of ran this unit was called Vladimir Antonov. He was killed by a sniper in Kharkiv a couple of nights ago. 2 days ago. It took a little bit to get this validated. It wasn't part of it. He had been accused previously. He's a Russian mercenary, but he'd been accused of killing prisoners of war and civilians. And obviously, he got hit by a sniper. He died at night during a reconnaissance in one of the areas, along with his comrade. And they're blaming it on a Russian media, the translations. Basically, they're saying he was leading troops in, but it was his own. And obviously, he's been involved with Putin in conflicts. But everything's in denial by the Kremlin. And he was a Russian operative in Syria and Libya. Got some sort of role. So it's he has passed away as well. So they're incurring some tremendous hit stuff. I do want to shift gears a little bit and just talk about the International Disability Alliance. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've had any contact with them. Their executive director is Vladimir Kuk, CUK, and one of the things that he is representing is, as we talked about before, the ability of disabled and women, children, those who can't physically or psychologically move themselves, and what it means. And they're a very large organization. And his comments, I can't describe the time frame. I'm sorry. It says basically when a conflict hits, everybody rushes to move to safe areas, ensuring the safety and health for themselves and their families. For many people with disabilities, this isn't possible. Mm-hmm. This is where I think we'll get into just a little bit, as we spoke previously about hurricane season and preparedness and inclement weather as it strikes around the world. That our group recommends strongly, starting with the smallest measurement you can put together, whether it's a phone call, whether it's transportation, whether it's an alternate path from your door to their door in case a wave, a tree, a car is forced into that path and you need to figure out how to move around it. Mr. Cook is on the same communication feed and has that same belief system, and he says it starts with something each day. Some of the evacuation plans aren't designed in accessible ways, and folks with disabilities can't reach everything from a metro station and bunkers to their neighbor, and sometimes the shelters aren't accessible. People use wheelchairs to enter and navigate. Sure, we have information on emergency evacuation and shelters and how to get assistance. They're not always provided in accessible formats. And some of the other things that we didn't speak about is if you're used to taking the lift, you're used to taking the elevator from ground level to subterranean level to get on to that piece of transportation, and that's not available to you. The alternative may be to identify what is the method for getting down that unusable lift, or what is the alternate way? Is there a locked door that leads to a series of ramps that get you there or get you back up? This is part of the thing that is part of the conversations with Mr. Cook. People with sensitivity impairments, those who are blind, deaf, hard of hearing, or those with a combination of deaf blindness, they don't understand how to access the limited safety and assistance that may be available. And there seems to be a level of stigma and maybe a little bit of ignorance against people with intellectual disabilities, PTSD, that increases during any type of conflict or stressful situation. situation and experiencing either violence, abuse, or have the pre-existing conditions or current conditions overwhelm them. And again, working through this international group, we again recommend. We absolutely recommend finding your advocate, advocating for yourself, finding the resources that you're counting on in your community, whether it's religious-based, faith-based, community-based, neighborhood-based, or family-based. And how are you going to make it work? What is your place of evacuation, organization? Where are you heading? What are you bringing with you? And we're not talking about dragging like a big army military 70-pound bag with you. That's not what we're talking about. But maybe it's a small rolling bag that can accompany your mobile device. It's when I say mobile device, mobility device. I'm sorry, mobility device. Did you remember to have, if it runs on a battery, your mobility device? Do you have a charger you need to bring with you? Do you have a backup charger? Same thing like you would for your cell phone. Do you have a water? Something as simple as a water or a bottle of water, that empty bottle that is refillable. These types of things. The idea here is there are groups, as we talked about, who face additional risks. They are women, children, older folks with disabilities, and those internally displaced between recent incidents. Each face multiple challenges. They're aggravated and overwhelming during some of these events. As we talked about in previous calls, thousands of children and adults, some with disabilities, are also trapped in institutions facing the risk of being abandoned or serious negligence. And that's something that if you have involvement or responsibility for yourself or somebody else, is to find out what the plan is before you need it. We talked about in depth the human rights values and the commitment by European organizations in advocating human rights there. This organization, Mr. Cook, the International Alliance, and they have a strong standards. Very interesting piece. They have they think they have the representative voice of over 1 billion persons with disabilities worldwide. And he wanted to remind all actors that any measures taken to address the situation and assist affected people must be fully guaranteeing the rights, inclusion, and participation of all groups of persons with disabilities according to international norms. And that was the last quote from him. And I think it's brilliant. I just think it's brilliant. But they validate a lot of things that we talk about. They validate a lot of things that we recommend. It's not about us. It's about seeing an international organization that is so far ahead of the curve, but their information just, I would hope for your listeners and for folks that have a concern. When do you start preparing? Tomorrow, if you haven't yet. It may be simple as finding out how you're getting from one place to another where it's safe. Just from one place to another to make it safe. Lastly, before I take down your questions, I do need to include just a small personal piece. I'd like to wish a special birthday and amazing wedding anniversary. And congratulations to KS Lewis. And very, very amazing person. And normally I don't recognize individuals, but in this particular case, the birthday wish falls on the same day as that wedding anniversary. So congrats to KS Lewis. And now I'm ready for the softball question followed by
Okay, so I've been thinking about this, and so as you know, Russia has some pretty big property lines, in the sense of, when you're on a boat, real estate is at a luxury, but when you're in Russia, there's a heck of a lot of real estate there. So my question to you is, obviously things could change overnight, right? So, potentially Putin could have a medical condition, leadership could change, although there's a 3-month election thing that they've got, with their prime minister that they'd have to do. But my question to you is, at what point will Putin in this war see the potential of losing real estate from other countries beginning to take interest with property lines?
And that's a great question, depending on what they see. And thank you for the question. I think we kind of danced around it a little bit in previous calls. And what I think the shops here kind of have a consensus of is part of the term, but what do you got? What do you got that's in it for me?
Mm-hmm.
Or what you got? I got nothing. No, you got something. And we're going to come get it, okay? Because if you're not going to defend it while you're over there on the western side of your country, you know what? Siberia looks pretty good for mineral rights. Anybody there? Yeah, just knock those guys off. There's only a handful of them hanging out up there, okay? Anybody want to take claim to the moon? Oh, Canada just started setting up some, and I said when the shop came in, he goes, Canada's trying to claim anything. Isn't Walter Hnot working on the space constitution? I was like, I'm sure he's been consulted. So it may start with something as simple as Siberia, and then so the whole key is what's in it for my country, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to put a ton of dough into making an incursion into somebody's country, obviously what I think most of the world has learned from Russia's February 24th through maybe 30 days, where the roads are narrower than your heavyweight equipment, and your equipment that you thought was in great shape has never been serviced, and the tires are rusting, and your people are freezing, and there's no food, and they're not getting paid. Their families aren't getting paid back home, and nothing seems to be working. So when you take on something like that as a comparative 30-day model, and you take it and place it any place in the world, the survivability rate is really low. The percentages are super low. So you're either coming in hot with everything really, the term hot. If you're coming in with everything just like dialed in, because the only answer for that is, if you're not, is failure. We saw that. We saw that as they tried getting through Kyiv, and the Russians were freezing in their tanks, and the tanks were out of fuel and abandoned on the highways, and the troops had guns but no bullets, and then there's no food, and they weren't prepared for the harsh weather. It's a big lift. It's a really big lift. I think maybe the example might have been D-Day, right? Hitting the beaches, Normandy. Think about the number of people, just to take the humanistic factor out. How many ships did it take to get the landing vessels there? And just what was the fuel bill back then?
Yeah.
Just the fuel bill to float all of that stuff there to make the attack, and then support everybody once they got off those ships.
A ton.
That would be the equivalent model for trying to look. Do you want to take over a small island off the coast of Tahiti? Okay, yeah, maybe you don't need that big lift, right? But financially, that's a big number. What's the return on investment? And that's one of the things I think a lot of countries are looking at. As they look at the gold standard and the dollar standard and the International Monetary Fund, it makes and breaks wealth, right? So depending on where you are in the world and what you expect, look, you want your own island? If you can't afford it, it might be cheaper to buy it than to invade it.
Yeah.
So when we think about Russia, I have never had personally the opportunity to tour a lot of that country. Obvious reasons. This goes back to when times were quiet. But when we think about it, some of the imagery is just stunning. Just stunning. Architecture, landscape. Beautiful, because for what you're allowed to see while you're there, if they know what country you come from, or your passport says you're from. But when you get into it, I don't know too many places that have an interest in, hey, you know what? Let's grab a couple hundred acres and see how it goes. See how it goes. I don't know if that answered your question, but I think it's a big dollar. It's a great question. Okay, while you're over there, we're going to invade you over. It's like pick another country. You know, you got your choice. Which side of Mexico would you like to? Okay, they're over worried about the hurricane coming up on the west coast of the Pacific. So we'll take all the gold off the east coast, and nobody will know. Montezuma, we take it back to that. You know, that things that or dock trails, whatever it was for moving gold. Got this big storm coming, so while that big storm's over on the Pacific, we're going to take it out through the Caribbean and the southern seas, and nobody will know. Oh yeah, you know what? We're going to take some people with us. We're going to create a new word. It's called slaves, and we're going to take some people with us too. And we're just called victim of the storm and disappear with like the gold and the people. Okay. We don't want the land. We got what we needed. We got the resources. So, not sure if that's a good example, but where we're at. Your comments?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
What I think is interesting is that we're tying land to the cost of oil as a result of basically what has become a transportation problem. And I mean, through our history, we always assume that getting food and supplies and fuel, it's always a problem. But what's funny about it, what's interesting about it is that everything's grown up. All the bases everywhere are so massive. All the towns they're so big now that to take over a town, a country, whatever, it takes so much resources, so much more than it did back in the day. When a town back in the day had 500 people, you could take over that town relatively easily. But now that it has 500,000 people, totally different game. The amount of, warheads, the amount of, shells and bullets, significantly higher. So what I think is interesting is that the cost of land has greatly increased to take over as a result of more people being and growing that land into something new. But yet you look at Ukraine has been flattened. They glassed the surface, and that was a result of basically Ukraine finding ways to take out their modern yet not modern enough technology. So from my perspective, what's interesting is that Russia has taken the land and removed the worth of it by glassing it. And as a result of that, you now have blank land, back to the origin theory of there's only 500 people living in that spot, which then removes the good new value that it had from all those people living on it. So it's like the cost of gasoline and diesel isn't worth the little towns of olden times. It's only worth it if you get the work product of the people to work the land. Otherwise, you're just taking over land that you have to protect, and it becomes a Roman Empire fiasco,
And then the flip side is if you kill all the civilians, run them off as you flatten the land, is there an identifiable resource in that underneath that flattened land? Is it mineral rights? Is it oil? Is it a gas reserve? Is it a natural gas reserve? What is it? Did you need that land to get your mainline natural gas feed through? And you don't care about people because you're just going to bring your own people in from your country. It's not the value of the land. It's the location. We spoke of the land bridge, so now they don't need to transport by sea to get product and materials from, I'll call it mainland Russia, to Crimea. They can drive it. If this is over and stop today, it's drivable. You don't have to go into the Sea of Azov and move it from Mariupol into another port, maybe on the Black Sea side of Crimea to get it there. And if you have unlimited fuel in your country, and fuel's not your issue because you harvest it, and that's the improper term, but basically you harvest and store it, and you have a government organization that says, oh yeah, you know how much we're going to save and not having to put it on a ship and float it through the seas to get to the other side since 2014? The other piece here too is, and we spoke about it, I think back in early May, wait for the guy, Alex is saying early May. We spoke about it in early May by removing the ability for Russia to move gas through the pipeline system that was set up in Ukraine before this all broke out, was billions with a B dollars in fees that were paid to the country of Ukraine for the transportation station and the use of the land, not the people, the land, to move fuel to the Baltics and the into Poland and to other transfer stations. By taking over and shutting it down, the Donbass region, and basically stopping the German pipeline from going through, which everybody seemed to have kind of fallen by the wayside, people talking about it. They shut that, the Russia-German pipeline shut down before it was in service. Now, Ukraine does not get the billions of dollars because they're not using that pipeline. They cut it all. So now when you look at it, the land doesn't have the value. You didn't need people, you needed land. You needed land, just like they needed the land bridge. So when we take a look at this, you come back and you say, where are we heading here? But again, we look at the United States and say the big pipeline coming through Native American Indian property, reservations, Indian reservations, that's all right. Mm-hmm. And then did they have to go around them? Or did they just pay the fee to the reservations for the people who occupy Native American United States, Native American Indians? You just pay the reservation for the use of the property and the maintenance to ensure it doesn't harm their environment and doesn't impact their environment and their property and their lifestyle. And there was a big argument. It went on for years and years. It continued to try and move some of the pipelines through Native American Indian properties in the United States. So again, sometimes it's not about how much you take, it's what you need it for and what you're going to utilize it for. We're currently working on and I'll share a little of this coming up in the next few weeks. Apparently, the statement is there's enough nuclear product in the United States that has been used for energy that can be repurposed to be used again. The fuel cells can be repurposed. So the reliance on fossil fuel would decrease if this is a valid resource and can be re-implemented. So we're waiting for sources other than chemical engineers, other than theorists in fusion, other than that whole educational side that only looks at it as a material that can still produces in relationship to a valid and identifiable business model for providing energy resources from older or less volatile fuel sources. It'd be great, wouldn't it be great? Suddenly, we don't have that reliability, and now they want to move a program forward that's not counting on fossil fuel. I don't know if it'll be in my lifetime because it's government and it moves very slow here, but parts of the world. One of the countries are taking advantage of geothermal, subterranean hot water, if you will. They pipe it. It's a Nordic country, and they use it for running pipes underneath the street. So I'll call it, if you think about Yosemite or one of the national parks out west in the United States with all this thermal energy below ground. This country has figured out how to run it through the sidewalks and the streets. So anytime it snows, it never sticks and it never freezes. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant, circulating warm natural water through it, through some sort of piping system. It's what you identify and what you use. So it's domestically, we're seeing fuel prices clearly over $10 a gallon in the Northeast, along the West Coast, up into Canada. It's Nova Scotia, I think, was reporting by the leader, calculated within pennies of $10 a gallon in Nova Scotia earlier today. And big tourist cities in the United States, a little easier to get the numbers from. State of Florida is certain areas is anywhere from $5 to $8 a gallon. San Diego, California is between $7 and $9.50. The New York City, outskirts of New York City, are in the $6 to $9 range, depending on location. And folks, if talk about transportation, it's probably sooner than later a great idea to start organizing the trips, maybe a different route if possible. I hate to say checking with a neighbor. There's quite a few in the United States, from what I'm understanding, supermarkets and Amazon are now delivering groceries right to your door if you have the right criteria. Just delivering the groceries to the door. One of the guys in one of the shops got a family member who orders toilet paper by the bundle delivered from Amazon right to his door. Doesn't have to go shop for it. Okay. I don't know if that's for everybody, but if it's something that's available to you and there's no additional shipping charge, it may be something to look into for groceries. It also seems to be a large increase nationwide, and I think it's probably because it is springtime heading into summer, of folks planting their own gardens. We're unable to determine the average size, but it appears that based on the amount of different vegetable products and plants, that there seems to be an increase. We're unsure if now that COVID is taken a backseat break, if we will, that people are getting outside and trying to enjoy their yards or properties or shopping for it. And again, I don't know if the seeds are being delivered at one of these services or not, offline or online or whatever it is. But a large amount of people have taken up everything from hydroponic to indoor grow. We associate that with other products, but there seems to be a large increase in that. There was a very formal statement from the White House a few days ago in the form of a press release that they've now allowed the President of the United States has now identified that the importation of solar panels and solar-related equipment to the United States from countries that have been previously taxed and charged a duty would now be duty-free, tax-free, and allowed into the country as an exception, and it's effective immediately for solar products, and it's good for the next 24 months. Very interesting piece that never made mainstream media. It appears that the panels may be a large product that's exported from China, Vietnam, Taiwan, Cambodia, Ukraine, and it's the panels themselves and some of the equipment. They specifically list the equipment or manufacturer, but those are the identifying countries that our shops identified from financial services. Now it's duty-free and impound. So here it was temporary, but temporary, I guess, in the eyes of President Joseph Biden is a 24-month period.
So I have another question, and I think you're right about Russia. I think you're right about Russia only because they have expendable humans. However, if you look at essentially, World War II, Schindler's List, China, the current Mongolian situation, and China has lots of people they can throw at the problem. If they don't have the human resource to go in and mine whatever they need out of the soil, then The problem is they need the people of that area. Now, these countries, the mega countries, USA, Russia, China, maybe India is a great one because they have a ton of people. They all have lots of expendable human beings, so they can throw them into that fray. Look at Russia constantly throwing young, Russian soldiers, conscripts to some degree, into the fray. But I point this out. That might be the only thing that keeps these nations truly keeping other nations afraid of, Russia, China, etc., the US, is that they have a nuclear deterrent option, right? So other people won't want to take Russia's land because then it becomes a nuclear deterrent option. Somebody tries to take their land, it's a big enough situation, they could go nuclear. And I think that the ironic thing about that is that nobody has gone, in the sense, nuclear with the whole Ukraine situation, because Ukraine didn't earn their right in the chairs of the council, if you will, of those that have nuclear weaponry to protect their land. And to some degree, right, Russia, like America, like China, like India, we all have our nation's protection. But when you think about this, you got to wonder, would places like Australia be able to pull something like what Russia's pulling off? Do they have enough expendable people? Would a place like Taiwan be able to do it? Would a place like Finland, would a place like maybe France, maybe Germany be able to do that? And, Germany had a hard time with getting people to be part of their cause without physically exerting the threat on them. And Russia has the ultimate threat, the nuclear, but then the backup is, I think you're right. That's the brilliant thing about it, is that they have so many people, they can just lift them up out of their roots, throw them into the place where they need them to do stuff, force them to do the labor, pull the minerals, pull the earth, and then basically transport it back to the motherland. And Ukraine didn't have that. They didn't have the nuclear threat capability. They didn't have the significant amount of expendable people elements. But I guess what I ask is too, is there anything on the border of Russia even worth mineral wise or oil wise taking,
So just going back to Ukraine's nuclear capability, and then they got involved back in 1994. Ukraine agreed to destroy their nuclear weapons and join the Treaty of the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, NPT, Non-Proliferation Nuclear Weapons Treaty. They declared their independence actually in 1991, and the Soviets left like 1,700, 2,000 nuclear weapons left on Ukraine's ground, on their territory. I equate it to certain countries leaving Afghanistan and leaving all kinds of weapons there. Soviets left 1,700, 1,000, just close to 2,000 nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Ukraine never really possessed the operational control of them, but under this agreement, for security reasons, they got, in exchange for security assurances, okay, we'll get rid of we'll disassemble these things and get rid of them and join this treaty, and they kind of put up. And here they are, 2022, and it's difficult. They agreed to get rid of their stuff, and they signed this. Actually, they signed it in Lisbon, and the Lisbon Protocol to treat non-nuclear weapons in 1994. So that was a disassembly period, but they agreed to. And so when we talk about, we had a real strong voice we were hearing from President Putin saying, hey, you know what? I got my finger on the butt. This is going back months ago. And everybody was very, very concerned. And we had some conversations on this channel regarding the difference between a Hiroshima type of full-scale, mother of all bombs kind of deal versus a tactical nuke, and what that would mean. I think we also discussed other weapons as well that were being used, but we also included a electronic magnetic pulse, electromagnetic pulse, which basically just disables the motor, electrical motor that's unprotected. And so you still have all your people in all your buildings, you just don't have that grid placement. So it leaves those people intact. What it may do, and it's not a humorous conversation, but have you now caused that group of blank number of people to rise up and be angrier and stronger to fight when you come in to take that location? Or do you expect them to resign and move on to a place that still has the availability to use the grid system or anything electrical? So they're going to abandon the cars, they'll abandon the homes, they'll abandon everything. And so you have buildings that none of it can work. And it's a very interesting. Do you need the people? Do you need the people? Your comments come at an interesting time as we're validating whether or not China's really unlocking their ports and attempting to reestablish manufacturing in their country. I don't think it has anything to do with the White House press release from just a day or two ago, which we did not, other than our comments just a minute ago, bring up. It's available online. It's open source from the White House press room.
True.
We got notice of it. We did get notice of it, and very few people are understanding or interested in it, unless you're working at those particular industries. Or, if there's value there, please read it. It may inspire you to, as one gentleman was saying, he got an LLC, I forget what, natural gas, but maybe this is his alternative move where he can become involved, and that you're the expertise is what he can and can't do. But back to China, if you're unlocking the ports, and there's a very, very elongated conversation in several shops here in the last 24 hours. And the question is, if they open up all the ports and go back to manufacturing, you go back to exporting, because they have all these empty container ships, like almost 2 out of 5 in the world, sitting off the coast of China's ports somewhere empty. We're still offloading stuff, and we're seeing it just being packed in photos into warehouses all over the country in the United States, North America, South America, Europe, as quickly as they can unpack these containers. And they're filled with what? Electronics and clothing and styles that were supposed to be out for last Christmas sales. So if we return to China this year and they suddenly open up everything, can they get the stuff here in your country for this Christmas? For holiday season? And the answer, what we came up with is with a very high probability is a no. Because even if you had all the resources you needed for manufacturing, packaging, and the ships lined up, the timeline exceeds 100 days to get it into the retail or saleable location for where they're known to export, major ports of export. So you had 100 days to July 1st, right?
Yeah.
You're beyond that period. You're just beyond it. You're beyond it. So we're unsure what this unpacking of China will become, but it's certainly something we're looking at. We see China making a move to partner up, create their own, take those people and insert them onto a flat piece of property. I think they would rather run equipment and use fewer humans and just move as they've always moved. And they have the equipment set up to solve for boring and mineral rights. It's easier to put a person there than a piece of machinery that can work 24/7 with 3 or 4 people keeping an eye on it or making sure everything's operational while it's moving. Then bring in 1,000 people and have to support 1,000 people that are hand digging. We could be wrong. We could be wrong.
Well, I think you make
again.
I think
the resource of humans is expensive.
I think you're absolutely right, because transportation costs alone, hand to hand, moving it from point A to point B. But I look at this scenario and I think to myself, look, when the minerals, right? When Elon's out there mining minerals out of giant space rocks that nobody gives a damn about, other than the fact that they have minerals that we like, and when we have fusion energy, I mean, would we even have war at that point, or would we just be fighting over land? And would land even matter when we could explore space? I guess. But the way I look at this is, Putin went there for a lot of reasons. Nobody can pinpoint exactly what he wanted because it's all, everybody has their own reason. But I think that's interesting because, like you said, they restricted Ukraine from, having a seat at the nuclear table. And as a result of that, if you don't have enough nuclear bombs to threaten the group and then enough people to fill that space once you take over it, then you don't really have the power of the big bad, I guess you would call it threat, the big bad threat. The US for NATO is the big bad. Russia for a USSR sort of mentality is the big bad. China for, the Asian countries is the big bad. India for that area, and then you could pick whichever you wanted for the Middle East. But I guess the point is, we get fusion, power changes. Nobody gives a shit about, petroleum. Nobody gives a shit about natural gas. Nobody cares about those things anymore because fusion replaces them all. We get minerals from outer space rocks. We no longer care about getting them from essentially Earth soil because we'll have too much of them anyways. Then we become this Star Trek kind of like society where we are never, in a sense, in need. And then I guess social programs get pushed more because then making people happy becomes the push. Because how do you control unlimited fusion? And I guess my thing, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. No, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
So if we look forward and it's absolutely not an original statement. It's very, very historic. That the only constant is change, right? So when we take a look back, we don't have to go back far in most countries to look at classification of people, and whether it's lower class, middle class, upper middle class, lower middle class, depending on the country, the wealthy, the elites, the super elites, the mega elites. When we look at humans and people, if their needs are being satisfied, but when we take a look at medicine, when we take a look at just medicine, and some of the available electronic procedures that are done today, when I say today, in today's times, I'm not a dentist. Everybody's been to most people have been to the dentist. Dad's a dentist, but my dad's not. I don't know what your dad is. You go see a dentist. Gas. We're going to get a sedative. You're going to chill out. We're going to go in with these special tools. We're going to put music on in your headphones. You won't even hear the drill. The drill's going to go in, and we're going to leave that tooth right in place. And looks like you have a bad root, and we're going to sterilize the thing out the root, and we're going to seal it off. We're going to put a beautiful crown or a cap or whatever it is over the top, and you're going to be really happy. And you're going to be going to dinner tomorrow night with all your friends. That's how great it's going to be. It's the evolution of electronics, of medicine, of medication, of policy. How do you get an X-ray? They used to put this cardboard thing in your mouth with some sort of film in it. They'd give you a big, heavy vest like you were going into the military, like a lead vest. The technician would run out of the room. You hear, you take this horrible piece of cardboard out of your mouth, and then they'd put another piece in, and then they'd go examine the X-rays to see what it looks like. Now you sit in the chair. They move this device over to you. It scans your head countless times electronically with no contact, and they can enlarge and see everything going on inside your mouth, okay? Where your teeth are, your alignment, the root, without touching you. So when we bring all this back, do you put 1,000 people to work because you can, because the medical technology allows you to? So will ultimately the changes to medicine as we advance reduce the number of people that are on Social Security, disability policies, whatever it is, because they've designed the technology? It's no longer going to be an issue to resolve whatever it is that we've said from working, because they figured it out, whether it be, it's a wrong set of words to use, but whatever that disability is, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a dentist. We don't work in those fields. We work in a different arena. But to your point of moving forward, is a working group, is a working economy, is a opportunity to become productive, is an opportunity to be healthy. Do we see that in our future? I think we would be naive not to think this constant change. I think we would be very naive. Do we think that at some point everybody would be healthy and able to contribute? When I say contribute to their own life, contribute to their family life. I'm not talking about the financial side. I'm just talking about living in good health, taking the stress away from the families, because it's whatever that ailment, whatever that illness, whether it's mental, physical, psychological, collective. We frequently forget the collectives. With a little of everything that keeps them from having a successful hour-minute day, getting out of their home, getting out of the rental, getting out of the car, getting into a car, getting off the wheelchair, whatever it is, taking a shower unassisted, cleaning themselves unassisted. Will there come a point, potentially, in science that changes? I think a lot of people that we speak to in the shops here, as these conversations, these philosophical and future-driven or vision-driven concepts come up and are discussed. I think people would rather have a better quality of life than to be victimized by whatever it is that is.
And I'm listening, and I don't mean to jump in here, but I think you've convinced me that the evolution of the human race, as it is, whatever it is that we ultimately get to the point where we have too much of everything, and land itself becomes without value, because we will essentially have spaceships, we'll have other planets. You want to move somewhere else. And the detachment to the original, this is mine, I have this, I'll have this forever, people will become removed from that because their desire to retain will be small compared to the desire to go on adventures and experience. You always see these people. I always see, it's like on the dating websites. You see all the women on the dating websites being like, I love to travel. I want to go traveling. And I look at them and I go like, how the hell are you gonna pay for that traveling? Like you gotta, make that much to go on that, and then you're not at work while you're doing that. How's that gonna work? And I always look at that and I think to myself, and it's another point I think that I kind of took away from that, which is that, like the dentist thing, we have less pain, less aggressive, maneuvers to get a better result than we used to have. I think that's what's happening to firearms right now. You have all these kids that are born in a world without hunting, all these kids born in a world that's a city, and they don't know firearms. They don't know the benefit of being able to protect yourself. And for that reason, the firearm thing is becoming extinct in the minds of the younger generation, because they just don't appreciate it, because they haven't had to. To them, it's like this thing where they can only cause harm. And then the Democrats jump on board and say, look what this gun did. Oh, it crawled in there by itself, didn't it? And I guess from my perspective, you look at Earth. Earth is a limited quantity of land, resources, water, whatever. But wait until we have the capacity to take hydrogen and convert it into any other element. Then what do we do with gold? What happens when we have a machine that you lay down in and it genetically regrows an arm for you, or changes some sort of deficiency which will ultimately cause cancer? I guess what I'm hearing is Russia is truly doing the last thing that we will see of the old guard human tendency, which is to try and get more. And at the end of the day, I think, in my opinion, energy, will become so abundant that the need for, I mean, think about it. There's all these technologies out there that require massive, massive amounts of energy. And I think the biggest technology that nobody talks about, but it's probably the most important, is when we can get superconductivity at room temperature. You get superconductivity at room temperature, it changes everything. And everything the human uses can be changed by superconductivity at room temperature. And yeah, I mean, and I
think one of the greatest examples of that is on a much smaller scale is when you can take your cellular device, lay it. You don't have to connect it. You can lay it on top of a charger, and at room temperature, that conductivity takes the electrical source through that charging station with contact, but not plugged in at room temperature, and it's moving that energy into your cellular device battery, right?
Right.
That's a small scale, if I got it there. So here we take a look at questions for your listeners. Let me give you one back, because they always what we're hearing and what we're seeing is a desire by either I'll say the younger adults, but we'd like a response, and I say it's probably more personal. I'll make it that way. My two adult children are doing okay. They're on their own. And when in a recent relocation, they had the opportunity to come to the home that they were raised in and take away absolutely anything that they wanted. Any physical object, anything on the walls, photos, albums. I'm not talking about record albums, because they had no interest in those either. But what we're finding is they prefer a work-life balance rather than a collection of things that have memories. So when we talk about their desire of what they want and need, it's completely different than, I think, either the Russian model of let's level it and take it. Got to remember, the Russian weapons, and I'm kind of all over the place here, I'm sorry, but the Russian weapons don't have the capability. They offer one in hypersonic, but primarily pull in, fire that tank, we'll hit the building, and we'll hit it until it lays flat. And then we'll keep moving, because that's all their equipment's pretty much basically able to do right now, other than the aircraft. So when we look at the kids, though, and I can't talk about children from Russia, because my two were not raised there, but here I'm curious, because as you're describing these things, they're not interested in property, they're not interested in land, they're not interested in I don't want to say material things, but they're experience driven. They are experience driven. Hey, where are you heading? I heard you're traveling out next week. Yeah, we're going to go climb Machu Picchu. Okay, and you'll be back in 10 to 15 days. Okay, great. And you say to yourself, okay, how long have you been planning to climb Machu Picchu? Go to Machu Picchu, okay? Of course, I had to look it up, okay, and find out where Machu Picchu was and what their draw or attraction was, but they're experience driven. They're not interested in owning a large farm and farming a piece of property. And I know they've had exposure to your incredible farm in the state of New Jersey, the family farm, yeah, and the exposure to and the comment is that's a lot of personal time work. So is work when you work in, whether you have animals or you have agricultural products, or is that work? Oh no, that's something that, no thank you. Okay. This is one, it's not like they didn't grow up where they had farms around them. Did it not appeal to you? And it's just, no, we think we'd rather do some other type of work and enjoy not having to be responsible for that. I think as we move forward, I think the responsibilities will shift. I think with the Great Resignation, and that was a huge conversation here for a while with last fall, where people were just saying, I've had enough. I don't want to work here. I've been working from home or wherever I was living, or I've been working remotely for almost 2 years now. Why do I need to put a suit and a tie on and commute and just to satisfy you as my employer or what you think the office space should look like? The office space looked pretty good on Zoom, and it contributed to the Great Resignation. Great Resignation, which still continues. My generation grew up primarily, if you went from one job to another in less than 5 years, there's an issue. There's kind of an issue. Unless you're tacking within your industry or tacking to an ancillary industry where greater opportunity existed. But here, it's if they get bored, what I'm experiencing through our observations here in the different jobs, it's okay to move. It's okay to traverse the country. It's okay to take time off and explore your life. And I think it's different. But I think when it comes back to who is doing the work and where they're doing it from, I think it was collectively from the shops here, what I'm hearing, I'm speaking is from a personal point, remote was okay. Because it's what's in your head. It's not in this certain industries. Obviously, you can work remotely, and there's huge value there. They want to get up at 2 a.m. and start working in whatever country they're in, and pick up, at noon, and then engage. That's how we see it. I see comments. I see Elon's name popping up. I think it's a referral to Elon Musk popping up, and he claims he doesn't have a home.
He does, though.
I mean,
he does. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. He claims he doesn't have a home and that he sofa surfs when he's in the area. So an email came through where one of our representatives and said something to the effect of like, "P.S. Elon says, big seeing you all for who made it to the house because he slept over because he had a rocket launched in like, I don't know, Boca Chica or something." And everybody turned around and goes, "Elon was at your house?"
Yeah.
Nobody cared. But it was just one of those things that, okay, is he a celebrity? I don't know. He's a well-known person. The question that most of the folks in the shop here will answer is, are you a left guy? And when I say guy, it's generic, men, women, whatever. Are you a left or a right person? They're like, well, what do you mean? Doesn't matter what you do for a living. We all put our pants on. Do you put your left leg on first, or your right leg on first? And it's just kind of balance it down. But he just recently called for all his employees to return to office space.
Yeah, I mean, you could call it calling. You could make it call it demanding.
Well, you know what? Most employment's at will, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, especially
I think we know, especially in the United States, most employment's at will.
Yeah.
And at will means, if I don't want to work there, you can fire me, and if I want to come to work for you, I'll apply. Back to the disability conversation, I think the change in medicine, I think the change in technology, I think what we're faced with internationally is a lot of distractions right now, Walter.
Yeah.
I think we're being faced with a tremendous amount of distractions, regardless of the country you live in, the town, city, state, type of dwelling, regardless of your physical or mental status. I think everybody is kind of tapped out. The real question that our software goes through such just the input and the volume that we produce and the data that we verified, and just the tremendous gains to make sure it's accurate for our clients and for you and your folks as well. It's overwhelming at times to recognize that the speed is just increasing. If we're all being distracted, what are we not looking at? What are we not looking at? There was a movie years ago, and it keeps coming up. I don't want to say it's a water fountain because it's really not a water fountain here, but Wag the Dog. Wag the Dog. And I think if it was Robert De Niro. Basically, it's two guys that are the spin doctors for the President of the United States, and there's a problem that takes place. It's an older movie, and ultimately what we end up with is finding out they've got to create a war, a fake war that nobody knows about. Wag the Dog was, they just handed it over to 1997, and it's a political satire with De Niro, Robert De Niro, Princeton Dunst, Dustin Hoffman, and it was basically the concept is an idiom that usually refers to something important or powerful being controlled by something less so. So you're going to look one way, and I'll pay attention to the gas prices, but nobody's paying attention to maybe the 18-wheelers that are rolling in and blocking the highway to distract you away from a political scandal, often through military action. And that's the contemporary definition of Wag the Dog, but again, to distract attention away from a political issue. I don't know if in the United States we would say it would be President Joseph Biden's difficulty with his family, or his difficulty physically or mentally, if the job is too overwhelming for him. There's been some examples given very recently. One of which was, I guess, leaving the podium, turning to his right to shake hands, and there was nobody there, like he kept up with the movements, and then had to be escorted from the stage. I guess one of his ex-daughter-in-laws has just published a book recently talking about how she wasn't actually considered a family member, and she was, although she was married to a son, was not provided security details in the best interest of our nation, because she was not considered a blood relative. Regardless of the TMZ, I guess that's the entertainment value of whatever is out in the world. They had some sort of show. So when we think about it, if somebody becomes ransom kidnapped or harmed, and they're related by direct, by the son or daughter of a sitting American president, we have an issue. When we're spending all kinds of money protecting our nation and other nations. I don't know this woman at all, but the report is she was denied a security detail while everybody else maybe So this Wag the Dog is very similar. Something important or powerful being used to control us, so we're looking in a different direction. It's hard here. Folks talking about guns, the gun control. I think it's interesting you can sign up for the military at 18 years old in most countries, but most other countries allow you once you're trained in weapons and have experience with a little bit of spirits. I don't know, alcohol, if you will. I think the United States of America is probably one of the few countries that has turned around and said, consider a nation, you can vote, and you can handle a firearm while you're under the employ of the military. You have probably a beard in certain states, but you leave your military service if you're less than 21 years old, you're going to lose everything except for the voting. You have to wait till you're 21. It's an interesting way to go. The true issue from our shop, and I'll share it with you, is firearms is a mental health and serious mental health issue that can be addressed in the capacity and ability. Let me be very clear, but for the ability to safely obtain and own and utilize a firearm in a safe and proper manner. Having nothing to do with the other. After the stabilize that business, Yeah. Okay, so they actually make something called a stabilizing brace to assist people who have difficulty in controlling a firearm, to give them better control so they can enjoy target shooting, the sport of hunting, whatever it is. And it's a brace that sits where the stock is, if I understand what I'm reading. And the government has decided they're going to stick their nose in. And President Joe Biden, according to this that I'm seeing just now, I've read it before, said the Second Amendment is, quote unquote, just not absolute. I'm not really unsure what he's saying there. I'm not sure what the President of the United States is saying in that statement. It's interesting, there's Sweden issues everybody over the age of 18 a firearm, a long gun, and they are part of their militia. This was back years ago. That particular country at that time had the lowest crime rate in the world. Right? He's got a firearm. Israel, over the age of 18, you are going into military service for a minimum of 2 years. And it's not for just firearms training, but it's a small country. That was what, 1948, over my hair. You're going into military service, and you're going to be a part of what we're doing. So, teaches some growth, some adult learning, some resources, and whether they choose to consider firearm. I don't know what their policy is once they leave, but very unique training. I don't equate it with the draft. I don't know people that go to the draft that we deal with. There's some veterans, and we have a tremendous large support mechanism for the veterans in the United States and in other countries. And we feel very strongly for what they do, and we thank them for their service to their nation. That is protecting their nation. It's like Ukraine's protecting theirs. For the Vietnam vets, a lot came back. They were unwelcome, and they needed services. The VA is just really, Veterans Administration in the United States is turning the corner with some new leadership. Hopefully, it'll lead to greater benefits for those that you can contact Walter. Reconsider, I think it's called TRICARE, Veterans Benefit TRICARE. I think it's a medical program in the United States for veterans. And revamping and cleaning up 30 years of poor standards, poor health care of the United States military veterans, and that should not occur in anything. Thank you for letting me ramble on that.
Yeah, sure.
Are spot on, and it's we have a strong Second Amendment group here, and believe in Constitution and the Bill of Rights in the United States. I get to see that team, and kind of like different teams, but come together for certain purposes. And when we get those guys together, whether it's electronically, and they're very vocal and very well educated, not only in their individual areas of expertise, but in that Bill of Rights and the Constitution. And when you hear somebody quoting Adams, or somebody quoting Washington, or Franklin's an interesting character. But I think what we're going to start to see is it's not whether you need or want a firearm. It's if you don't have anything that prohibits you, mental health or inability or age. One guy's, actually, I shouldn't say one guy, I've heard it frequently over the last maybe 6 months. This is my firearm has sat in the corner all day and watched it. It's not made a move towards me yet.
Hasn't crawled at him yet. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hasn't crawled at him yet. So I'm going to break here. I want to get these shops who have been very patient with me this evening. Thank you all for it. I greatly appreciate it, and appreciate you giving us the opportunity this evening to we can come off script a little bit. We can come off the R&D. A lot of the shops and shop leadership stays just in case something comes up that's so random, and slide it over to me or send it to me by tablet or hand it to me, and it's great, and they're really a resourceful group. But I think what we're going to see coming back to Russia, Ukraine, I think in China, I think what we're going to see is this elongate at least till a certain date in November.
Mm-hmm.
I think they call it the midterm elections in the United States. Coming up in November, I guess the primaries had already been, primaries have already started in some states. And if this truly is the wag the dog, please be aware that it's worth watching the movie if you can find it. It's a dark comedy, but puts a lot of things into tremendous context for current times. Kind of alarming that they made the movie and now you see it, and it's like, hey, wait, it's like episodes of Simpsons. The Simpsons like forecast like that kind of like the cartoon. It's almost an adult cartoon, I guess. We catch it different formats and different cuts, but whoever wrote that script seemed dialed in years before the events take place, and kind of forecast how it works out. Thank you for your time, everybody. I appreciate it. Again, if you've got comments that you pass on to Walter, I'm curious if your siblings, family members, children, people you work with are driven by experience rather than possession. They want to get that hot air balloon and fly. They want to sail 7 seas in 7 weeks, or whatever it is. And some of it does require material items, and they have to obviously produce an income or have an opportunity that somebody else produced an income. One of the guys in one of the shops had a family member that went up to British Columbia for a wedding, and for the people who didn't live in the area, the family either owned or rented a chartered yacht for them to stay on collectively in the cabins over a 4-day period. Wow, okay, that just didn't happen in my life. I might get invited for lunch, maybe. That wasn't so, and it's an experience. I said, how did it go? I said, how did you? They're like, oh yeah, that's another experience in the books. It's okay, we're good with it. Well, good. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Stay safe. Stay safe until we meet again. And we meet again. Godspeed in your mission, sir. Be well.
Perfect, sir. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So just to clarify for people real quick, with the Second Amendment, there was a Supreme Court ruling specifically about an individual's right to possess, to own a firearm. This whole identity of its purely state-based allowance is incorrect. States have the right to restrict an individual that is within their boundaries who is a citizen to that specific state. But the end game is that a person has the right to possess and use a firearm lawfully, with the Second Amendment being the foundational law. There's no law that dictates to the Second Amendment other than the Supreme Court defining what it actually means, which they did specifically in that case that I just gave you. So I'm a little concerned as to what you guys are talking about. 2008, really important case law. You don't just have to have state-based armories and state-based groups. You can have something beyond your state as a militia. You can involve those things. You can be an army of one individual who just wants to buy a gun, to have a gun. So I'm a little bit worried about how you guys are figuring the construction, essentially, of the Supreme Court. But please go read that case. It will help surely fill in the gaps as to what it actually is from there. But anyways, I'll catch you a little bit later. That was excellent. We just had a gentleman give us a really good walkthrough as to Ukraine. One of the things that I kind of learned from that was that I think Biden was pretty upset, pretty sad, but he didn't get to use the Ukrainians, didn't get to rule over the Ukrainians that were there, to use their people power to go ahead and not only mine their attention, but also mine their work product to make them do more things. So as a result of that, I think Putin really, within the first couple of weeks, lost his best bet, which was to go ahead and control people and use them there, kind of like what Hitler did with World War II and Schindler's List, etc. But I think the other thing too is that now that Putin's gone full tilt, he's essentially in glass the entire country and then set up his own system there and put his own people there, which is what I think is something I realized too from this conversation. In order to be a big bad, there's two elements. You need nuclear capability and also the people to fill a nation or fill an area of land that which you can take over and then fill it with your people to go ahead and work it. So that is pretty darn interesting. Anyways, I'll catch you guys a little bit later. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful night. And then we'll kind of go from there. Anyways, it is so late. It's 11:21 p.m. This is so much farther and deeper than we usually go with this stuff, but I think it was really, really good. Slatherings, maybe I'm misunderstanding you, maybe you're not, but I got to be honest, man. I was reading some of the things you said 100%, and then you'd hit me with something that was completely wrong, and I would go into freak out mode because Supreme Court precedent equals that's it. That's the definitive. That defines it. Like at the end of the day, the legislature has to come out with something completely new. And then the Supreme Court usually has to review it again because it gets sued, and then it goes all the way up, and then a district circuit and Supreme Court has to rule on it, etc. But send me an email, I'll check it out, and I am interested to hear what you have to say. It's just you have to understand something. My goal as a person is to make sure human beings, especially women, especially children, have a means to defend themselves. Whether a state is involved or not is irrelevant to me because the federal government has the capacity to go ahead and give the base fundamental power. Unfortunately, states do have the ability to restrict firearms further, so they can take a federal law and they can squeeze it to make it more narrow, which in my instance, I'm not a huge fan of when it comes to protection of human rights. There are other areas of law where it's a good thing. But at the end of the day, what's absolutely crucial is to realize the fundamental. Not all people are big and strong. Some people are weak. Some people are incapable. It's okay to be weak and incapable because we have agents that allow for true creation of equity. Equity, in its most basic form, is defined as the earliest handheld firearm that can protect a small person from a big person. That the earlier form of that would, of course, maybe be a rock, but a firearm obviously was a much more successful, item to go ahead and use as self-defense in that realm. Some would argue that the small person could then take over all the big people, right? That's true. And, that's also an issue. But hence we create the laws. Nobody's equal, but we create equal laws to make sure everybody is treated equally. And now the new thing is not to just treat people equally, but to create equity based on those who have been treated, improperly, without equality. And that's not a bad thing either. But when it comes to guns, everybody should have a base fundamental right to, at least if they're sound of mind, have the opportunity to invoke their Second Amendment and obtain a firearm for self-defense purposes or hunting. A lot of generations coming out now like this idea of restricting firearms because all they see of it is newsflash, newsflash, newsflash. Somebody was shot. There's a school shooting. There's this shooting. There's a whatever shooting. And emotion is the number one characteristic of a party's design, whether it be Republican or Democrat or something else, communism, whatever, to go ahead and change the mind of a human to give up the base fundamental rights that they were given by a country that was absolutely disgusted by choices made through emotion. It is always the quintessential truth to make choices based on analytical understandings that are founded on your, let's call it, morals and ethics. But morals and ethics of kids nowadays are easily misled. I mean, think about it. Why do most kids go into the military versus why do most kids want to get rid of firearms? Kids are easily manipulated into the capacity of thinking and wanting something that they don't necessarily understand in their youth. And as a result of that, they can be pushed in a direction. That study, that change of identity throughout their life. Look, you take a 50-year-old, you put them on a battlefield, they don't want to die. They don't want to die. You take a young kid who doesn't understand death. They don't want to die as well, but it's for a completely different reason. And as a result of that, what it comes down to, in my opinion, is that the youth have always been used to damn the rest of us. It's true. You know, whether you're on the Titanic saying, you know, what of the children? Or there's somebody in a group saying, think of the children. The think of the children person, the what of the children person is always a scared, useless human being. Because at the end of the day, those children are the direct descendants of the human beings making choices unless the government takes the power away from the adults, the parents. We should never let the government take the power away from the adults, the parents. If we do that, we lose the continuation of our line and therefore the continuation of our thoughts. And that's the definition of culture. So anyways, guys, I'll catch you a little bit later. I'll go, I'm going to hop off. Tomorrow you'll see some videos of me actually working on the farm, which has been really rough. Today I had 2 hearings. I did a bunch of phone calls. At 5 o'clock, I went out and shoveled dirts to go re-level the stalls. Super beat, poison ivy all over the place. I'm going to show you the spot that I have left. There's one spot left on the fence where it's covered in poison ivy, and I have to pull all that crap off. A lot of the poison ivy has officially almost finished. It almost ate through the skin on my middle finger. It's finally started to get better here. There's still some spots on my body, like my stomach, where it went down my shirt, inside of my thighs and stuff like that, where it just, you know, and what happened was when I would, you know, confetti through weed trimmer, the poison ivy, poison oak, poison sumac, it would get onto my pants. And then basically over time of me walking, the oil would get pushed through the fabric. Absolute misery. But I'll catch you guys later. Have a wonderful, wonderful night, and live the dream. And don't forget to defend your rights so that you end up with a future generation, your kids, not only using, appreciating, but being able to afford the things that their rights give them. I'll catch you later. Have a wonderful night. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.